On this upcoming Trackings episode, our exclusive interview with the creators of the miniseries Des, plus our reviews for Des, The Outpost, Antebellum, The Trial of Chicago 7, and American Murder, The Family Next Door, plus trailers for the new Borat, Witches, Fatman, and a whole lot more. All this on Upcoming Attractions Midnight Double Feature.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Midnight Double Feature. This is an upcoming attractions episode. I'm here with my main man, Matt, that I'm always here with upcoming attractions episode. What's going on?
Hey, man. Yeah, I'm, apologies for any sound differentiation today. I'm moving house and I'm still working on this recording space, but yeah, I'm happy to, let's get at it.
Yeah, you're in a different space than you were last time. You don't have your little table and like you kind of like makeshift thing that you were working with last time, right?
Oh god, yeah. Last time I was in a different bedroom on a little coffee table. Now I'm on an actual desk in a different bedroom. But I've got a lot of like windows and mirrors around me, which is not great for audio, I think. So hopefully I'm just really counting on this microphone to do good for me today. So,
we'll be right, hopefully. We'll see how we go in post when I'm just kind of like ripping my hair out. But it's fine. It's fun. Guys, thank you so much for joining us here at Upcoming Attractions. If you want to follow us on our socials, head to Facebook, which is our main group is called The After Party. That's 3 words, The After Party. Instagram, which is at Midnight Double Feature. Twitter, at MDF Pod. You can email us, send us an email if you have any issues or any complaints or requests or whatever. That email address is midnightdoublefeature@gmail.com. We're also on Patreon. Please, subscribe because, we are an independent podcast with no advertising. It's just us. We're breaking our backs to bring you content. And if you want to head over to that, it's patreon.com/Midnight Double Feature, or for our main hub where you can find literally everything related to Midnight Double Feature, including merch. Head to midnightdoublefeature.com. We don't plug our merch enough, dude. Like you just smiled and you're just like, yeah, I keep forgetting that we have merch, but it's crazy. This episode's going to be slightly different than your usual Upcoming Attractions episode. We were lucky enough to be able to sit down with the creators of the miniseries Des, starring David Tennant. So thank you to Lewis, Arnold, and Luke Neal. Lewis directed every episode and Luke wrote every episode. And we were just out, dude, I was like me with my true crime and things like that. I was just, I had a massive smile on my face while talking to those guys. And it was totally like inappropriate considering just how morbid the TV show is. So we were lucky enough to score an interview with those guys. And the interview is going to be right up front here on this episode. And then after that, we're going to go into a whole bunch of trailers, including the new Borat trailer, The Witches, Fatman, MANK, News of the World. Actually, not News of the World. We're not talking about that this week. We're talking about with the 355, starring Jessica Chastain and Lupita Nyong'o. And then we're talking about Free Guy. And then we have a few reviews for you as well, including The Trial of the Chicago 7, American Murder, Antebellum, The Outpost, and I'm going to close off with my review of Des. And then we're going to play our MDF game, and then we're going to get the hell out of here. But yeah, look, guys, thank you so much for sticking around with us. We're going to get into the Des interview right now with Lewis Arnold and Luke Neal. And after that, we'll see you guys on the other side to talk all things trailers. So stick around.
Take your time. Take us through it again.
So we're talking about one body or two? 15 or 16.
I mean, this whole thing is about your relief to get out of my chest. It's always been to Nelson's scripts. He planned this.
We have now charged a man by the name of Dennis Nilsson with murder.
Confirmed that Dennis Andrew Nielsen has been charged with the first of what is said to be multiple murders.
Someone who knows our world, our community, needs to write this.
Do you think you'll shake his hand?
No, I shouldn't think so.
But you're also fascinated by him, aren't you?
I look in the mirror, you see me. Friendly, helpful, responsible me.
Killed on our patch for 4 years. He gets away with nothing.
I used to go listen to Makes me feel human again.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning in to this very special interview. Before we dive into this, I just want to really recommend watching the TV show Des before listening to this. It's an absolutely fascinating and captivating 3-part miniseries that gets into the case of the Scottish serial killer Dennis Nilsen, played wonderfully by David Tennant in what might be one of the best performances of the year. And I'm not just saying that because you guys are here. Like, that is, I turned it off and I was like, that might be one of the best performances of the year. So joining me here today is the director of all 3 episodes, Lewis Arnold, whose previous credits include shows like Broadchurch and Misfits. But not only that, we're also joined by the incredibly talented co-creator and writer of Des, Luke Neal, who not only wrote Des, but starred in, and this blew my mind, I had to do some research for this, starred in Star Wars The Last Jedi and Sci-Fi's Krypton. Okay, look, I got to ask you about that somewhere towards the end because that just blew my mind. Gentlemen, thank you so much for joining me, and thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedules. Lewis, I know you're getting ready to shoot and head into production, so I really appreciate just taking the time to talk to me about this. So really appreciate it.
It's a pleasure. Thank you for having us.
That was me saying yes as well. That was me saying yes as well.
The very non-committal yes.
That's all right. Again, it's Sunday, so you don't have to commit to anything you don't want to. This is more of a question for Luke, but Lewis, absolutely feel free to jump in. Des is based off the book Killing for Company by Brian Masters, who you feature as a primary character in the show. And unfortunately, I haven't had the pleasure of reading the book, but what inspired you to take on this project and write Des and tell the story of Dennis Nilsen? Did you have creative freedom to veer off from the book and take into account other sources, or did you stick very closely to the narrative and just go off that?
No, I think with something like this, a case like this, it was Lewis and I's duty or burden, if you like, to take as many sources as we could, really. And the thing the great thing about the book is not trying to be a narrative. It's trying to be as objective as possible. And so that kind of gave us a tone that we had to be as objective as possible, in the sense of we weren't trying to push something on it, and it gave us a huge amount of information. It's quite a lot of information in it, which is incredibly unpalatable to read and put into yourself. Because he uses Nielsen's words a lot in order to just describe what happened to these poor men a lot of the time, and that's really horrific to read, especially through the guise of Nielsen. But what the book does do, I think, and what helped us a lot, and I think during the process of it, is it really is an account in 1983 of what was going on. And so much of the other stuff that we researched was 10 years after, was 20 years after, was even 30 years after, and the people who were involved in it had told this story so much that it kind of veered off from their own narrative. So what Killing for Company gives us is probably the closest narrative or closest information from when the time was happening. Because even when we did, and they were incredibly helpful, speak to the people that were around at the time, they're remembering things that were almost 40 years ago, when Killing for Company was written on as it was happening. And so we found that kind of very helpful to keep going back to.
It also provided essentially, Nielsen writes that one of the key interesting factors of the book is that Nielsen wrote letters, lots and lots, hundreds of letters, which we saw to Brian Masters, and lots of those letters and Nielsen's own words and accounts are in the book. So we were able to pull a lot of what Nielsen says. I'd say pretty much 80% of what Nielsen says in the drama are things he said, whether they're within a letter or within spoken word. So a lot of all of his opinions and his contradictions, we just lifted from the book. So whilst in reality, he probably said them in a letter to Brian, we obviously have taken those and dramatized them by putting them in the room with Brian. And that was the key thing the book gave us, was a voice for what Nielsen was thinking, or at least what he was saying at the time. And then obviously the big thing the book gave us, really, because it didn't give us much beyond it didn't give us much in terms of narrative because the book is an exploration of Nielsen's crimes. And we're not really we didn't want to look or focus on the crimes themselves. That would have felt too sensational. So what it did do, the big thing it gave us was Brian Masters himself. Access to that man, and also access and Luke's idea to put the character in the piece is what's really interesting about Killing for Company is that you've got a man who's sitting in front of a serial killer at the point that he's not even been charged and is in remand, interviewing him and trying to get beyond the facade as the same way the police are to some form of truth, an emotional truth or whatever he's looking for. And that's what the book gave us. It gave us a character and a setup that was just, really, really interesting to put opposite, Nielsen. And that actually happened. Brian was meeting him regularly throughout that period. And whether or not Brian's impact and the questions Brian was asking impacted on Nielsen as we kind of suggest it could have, in terms of the way he, decided to plead not guilty, all of those elements is what was fascinating for us from that book, I think. The idea came from you watching documentaries, didn't it? Seeing the documentaries, Luke.
Yeah, I mean, the original idea wasn't from the book. The original idea was I watched the documentary and realised that the second house, Cranley Gardens, where he's caught, it was at the time 10 minutes away from where I lived. So even though it happened 30 years before, it was a local story. So then I started watching all these documentaries and started reading bought Killing for Company, started reading that, started reading everything I could on it. And I kind of realized that actually quite a lot of Killing for Company aside, quite a lot of what is written about this case isn't quite right. It isn't quite true. It's through the guise of a 1980s prejudice, which the more and more that Lewis and I researched it, the more it became clear that one of our duties was to right the wrongs of the past and right the wrongs of the misinformation that was given, especially about the victims. Brian became this incredible source. His book was a great source for, as Lewis said, of Nielsen's personality at the time, of Nielsen's voice. But Brian also became an incredible source of the case that was going on at the time and what the case was doing in London and what the case was doing to the media, and that became obviously quite a big part of our narrative as well.
Absolutely, the book sounds like an incredible jumping off point to making your own sort of dramatization. Lewis, you talked about how you guys used the letters that Dennis wrote as sort of like supplementary to the script. So pretty much what he said in the letters ended up on the screen. That was kind of like leading into my sort of next question, where I was going to talk about casting, because obviously you've got David Tennant, who is absolutely killing it. And, he's been in huge things like Broadchurch and, Marvel's Jessica Jones and Doctor Who. And his performance feels so, and I hate to say this because I'm not sure if it's the right word, natural, because we're comparing him to Dennis Nielsen, but it feels so natural in that a lot of his dialogue seems very improvised. So my question was, how much of this was kind of like off the cuff improvised and how much of it wasn't? Was it all on the page? Because, when he sits back, he's got the cigarette. It just sounds like word vomit. And I mean, like word vomit in the best ways that would kind of tell you who Dennis Nielsen is. But at the same time, it feels so natural and kind of off the cuff. So was that all scripted?
Yeah, I mean, all of those long sort of 8-page scenes, were scripted, and that's testimony to David, really, that he was able to take those words and throw them away in such a way. I mean, you're right. There is an element of verbal diarrhea with Nielsen himself. Any narcissist, loves to hear their own voice.
Hear themselves talk. Yeah, absolutely.
And that's what Nielsen was. And that's what Luke captured from the book. It's what Luke put on the page. And I mean, the great thing about this project was that David was attached, 4 years ago. So me and Luke had been on it for 5 years. And Luke managed to get the script to David just at the time I was working with him on Broadchurch. It was quite a coincidence, wasn't it? Mm-hmm. And you know, and then the first time I met David at the read through for Broadchurch, he came up to me and said, "Are you doing Des with Luke?" And I was like, yeah. And we sort of chatted. So David's been involved for such a long period that he's read all of the drafts and been a part of the research and inputted into what is in those scenes. Because there's so much stuff about, you know, there's so much stuff we didn't put in the drama. You know, this could have easily been 4 or 5 episodes.
Absolutely.
You know, there is so much material that we didn't include, and characters and people that were affected by this that we just didn't have the time and the resources to put in. And David's been a massive part of, you know, from a micro sort of sense, each individual scene and what is said in the scenes, and then on a wider sense, what's in the drama. So he knew the material inside out. He knew the scenes inside out. But he just, you know, he, as all of them did, he really took the weight of the job upon himself. You know, he would separate himself from the other actors because he felt that was the responsible thing to do. He didn't want to be hanging around with the police having a laugh in between takes.
That makes sense.
He would sit in a room watching. There's a couple of clips and bits of footage that we had of Nielsen, you know, so he would watch those, you know. And then the other thing he did, which Danny Mays always tells this anecdote whenever Danny's doing press for the show, which was there was a scene we cut where Nielsen signs his confession. And, you know, apparently David did a take and then leant over to Danny and with his phone and said, "Do you think this is a good match?" And he had the exact signature, Nielsen's signature. He'd practiced it to the point.
Wow.
And that level of detail says something about David, the way he works. You know, he really puts the work in to get the performance. So what, you know, the fact you've just said it was, you know, felt like it was improv, I think is an incredible testimony to his performance, his work. You know, because we, you know, all of it was scripted. I mean, he was just the perfect person for that role, really.
Absolutely. He just absolutely disappears into the role, and it's fantastic to see. I remember the first time I saw an image of his kind of like makeover to look like Dennis Nielsen. And, you know, I was just telling Luke just before you jumped into the call that I had only found out about Dennis Nielsen probably about 4 or 5 months ago. Honestly, I had never heard of him before in my life. And then I listened to a podcast and I heard that, and then I saw the photo and I was like, wow, that is just a bang on, spot on job for the makeup department. Whoever did the makeup is just absolutely incredible.
You can imagine, like, you know, we'd done 5 years research on this case, and then suddenly, first day of filming, you see the person that you've been looking at for 5 years, but like a very, like, that looks a little bit like David Tennant, you know, but you're like, but this is Dennis Nielsen. It was really crazy to see how much he'd kind of disappeared into it with the blue shirt and the glasses and the hair. They did a great job. They really did a great job on.
Yeah, that was Anita Anderson was the makeup artist. I mean, there was 2 key moments, wasn't there, Luke? I'd say the read through, because he arrived late to the read through, and he still looked like David. He hadn't had his hair dyed or.
No.
But I remember he arrived late and sat down. Not late, but he arrived on time. But generally, read throughs, everybody arrives early to have a cup of tea, say hello. And David kind of walked in. I think as we were all sat down, sat down. And just did, you know, and everyone started, and I think when he first did that first big scene, I remember looking up, and every actor around the room, every person, their mouth was just kind of down, and they were just in kind of in awe of what, and he wasn't really acting at the read through, but it was still, you could see that he was shaping and finding things, and there was that moment was quite special, because me and Luke had, you know, we'd cast David, we'd sort of been working with David for it and on it for 4 years at that point, and we'd never seen him do anything. You know, we knew how great he was, so it was a great moment for us. But to see the whole room and the energy in the room was, oh my god! And then after the read through, you know, David left to go and do, I think, makeup and costume fittings, and everyone was talking about it. And then the other moment was the first day, David's first day, which was, I think, our 3rd day on the job. And the first thing we shot was him being taken back to Melrose Avenue to show the police where he burnt the bodies. And I remember it was a night shoot. It was cold anyway, and there was just a really eerie quality to having David. That being the first scene we shot, he's handcuffed to Al Bat, and I remember, you know, we did it in long 1 takes with a Steadicam, and I remember it being I remember the first take, the whole crew just watching the monitors and just being like, you know, there was an eeriness about it. And it kind of created this element of the dawning realization of the sensitivity and the job that we had to do, which was to not glorify or subjectify him or sort of put him on any kind of pedestal, which is quite easy to do. You know, when you're sort of doing a piece about serial killers, you have to kind of go and look at the human cost more than the sort of the enigma of the person, if that makes sense. But yeah, those were the two moments I remember as being quite standout.
It kind of goes. I've never been on a set, and maybe I have been on a set, but I haven't noticed.
You've been on lots of sets as an actor,
but I've never been on a set that it felt like the crew and the cast felt the weight of importance of this. Everyone was so passionate about it. It felt. I think that's probably testament to Lou, actually, that everyone was so in it and so willing to work so hard. It was coming up to Christmas. You know, we didn't have a huge amount of time to shoot. We were up against it time-wise, but everyone felt like they'd taken on Lewis's passion for the project. And so every time I walked on there was an atmosphere that they all wanted to do amazing work. And I feel that comes from Lou, and that came probably from David as well. The first day that you saw David, and everyone went, okay, we've got to step up our game. We're going to, and so it really felt like everyone was there to do their best work and honor the memories of the people that are no longer with us that are involved in the story.
I mean, I'd love to take credit for that, but I think it always comes down to your leading men. And we had, you know, David, Danny and Jason. And I think when your three leading men are as committed as they were to portraying the men that they were. So, you know, Danny was so keen to make sure that he did justice to Peter J and Peter J's family and his legacy. And, you know, Jason, Brian Masters is still alive. So Jason, you know, wanted to get that accurate. And I think when people come in and see that those three characters, those three actors are really, and I have done the work, I think it makes everybody else go, okay, I can't come in and just mess around. So I think everybody stepped up. But I think there's something about true crime anyway, which is any actor that gets involved in true crime that's playing a real person, or even if it's a fictional character that's kind of a combination of, as in the case of Charlotte Proctor, played by Brona, if you're playing a fictional character, but it's an amalgamation of a couple of people of the time, you feel a responsibility anyway. You don't want to turn up and have not learnt the lines, so I think that it's less about my passion for it and more about the individual's responsibility to do right by the person they're portraying. Whereas in a fictional drama, there's less of that responsibility.
Absolutely. And it all shines on screen. Like, I mean, the moment when Daniel May's character, DCI Peter J, arrives at the house, and then, you know, they're waiting after they find the bones, and then they're waiting for Nilsson to come back. There's that shot of him. The first time you see him is from the back in the bus. And just that kind of that reveal itself really lends to the atmosphere and the just how seriously you guys took the subject matter and how much respect you paid to the seriousness of it is really, really fantastic and definitely shines on screen.
That's good to hear, because they wanted to cut that scene because of
oh really?
because of time and money. They wanted to cut the bus, and in the end, the only way we could get it was the producer, ironically, had to shoot that shot. So we at lunchtime we prepped it and we sort of went through it with the grip, and the grip had rigged it, and we showed them roughly what it was, and then our brilliant producer David Minty, who's now doing much bigger things, and he was the first assistant director on Chernobyl. So he's oh
fantastic. My god, I love Chernobyl.
Yeah, it was amazing. So he was the first assistant director on that, and has been a first assistant director for years, and it was his first producing job. But he shot that scene, that moment, because we couldn't fit it in the main unit, and me and Luke were so keen to not lose it as a key element, because it is the first time you see him. And I think if you just cut to the street and had him walking up, it loses that tension. It loses that the element of the whole show, really, which is the enigma of Nilsson and trying to get beyond the facade and
also
the mystery, right? It feels very mysterious.
Yeah, but also what I love about that shot, having seen it so many times, it is about all of those things, but also it's the person that's just on the bus. He's among other people. He's just a normal person seemingly
hiding in plain sight.
Hiding in plain sight. And if you'd have him walking up the street, just walking up the street on his own, you wouldn't have got the fact that this man gets on the bus to go home, but he's been doing these horrific things and getting away with it for 5 years. I think it's such a great multi-layered shot that allows you to know where Nielsen is when he's about to be caught. And it's probably 3 pages in exposition done in one shot, and that's the best kind of filmmaking in my opinion.
But then the easiest thing, as I said, from a practical point of view, when you flick through a script and you're like, that 1/8 of a page is going to cost this much money, can we do without it?
Yeah.
There was a lot of that on this job, because we had an incredible production company, but we had limited money and resources. And when you're trying to create 1983 London in 2020 London, it's incredibly difficult, and we had to make some very hard decisions across the editorial of this to make what we made. There was lots of and we had to fight battles for things we really believed in. And one of those battles, which I'm really glad that we did in the end, was we were going to cut Leslie Mead from the court case. So, when Jay goes out of the court case and sees her and sits with her, and she essentially says, which, I think there's an element of truth in, which is, all the police care about is the fact that they're the guys that did this. And I think there was an element of that feeling, especially and that came from Leslie Mead herself, who the production spoke to. I never spoke to her personally. She's one of the few I didn't. But our exec producer, Kim, did. And there was a feeling of being completely let down by the police that we felt was important to get in there from the victim's perspective, or the families of the victims, was a feeling that they felt incredibly let down by the police. That family in particular, because he was never charged. Nielsen was never charged with that murder, even at the point that he died, and they couldn't afford to do it personally. So there was an element of that they had been fouled, and I thought it was important for Peter J to hear that, as much as it was for the audience to be aware of it, and for one of those characters to say that to them, which is, really what you care about is that, wherever the truth lies in terms of Peter J himself, the police force wanted to put this to bed in many ways. Yeah. But you have to pick your battles. There's plenty. There's the one most. I'm really telling stories now. I shouldn't, but
please.
One of my favorite scenes ended up on the cutting room floor, which I'm absolutely devastated about. And I don't know why I kind of loved it so much, but I know David felt the same. And I think it was just, it said so much about Nielsen and who he was. But there was a moment that we were told, which is not in any documentary or anything. It was a moment that Steve McCusker told us in one of our many interviews and meetings with him, that, Nielsen wouldn't stop talking when he was in the police station, constantly talking. And when he took him to the toilet one time and he was smoking, and he as he finished in the toilet, he said, "Look, can I flush this?" That he was talking about the cigarette, the end of the cigarette. And McCusker said, of course you can, really surprised that he'd asked, because it was such a commonplace back then. And Nielsen's response was, "Well, I had to ask. Last time I flushed something down the toilet, I ended up in here." And why? And we shot that scene. And why I felt it was so important in some ways was because it was out of the context of the interview scenes. So it wasn't like he was making those kind of offhand comments that he makes in the interview scenes. It was done when there was no one actually speaking to him. And it says a lot about who he was, that he had this cold, because at some point in those scenes, he talks about having remorse and how he feels remorse and regret for the victims. And then on the other hand, he stands in a toilet basically making light of what he's done. And we have a few of those moments in the show anyway. And those aren't in there because we're trying to make people laugh, because I know that was a response from some people was, there's a couple of moments that sort of like you laugh at. And I'm like, we never put them in for laughs. We put them in because that is what he said. And we're trying to say something about who he was as an individual.
And I also think it's a power game, isn't it? So this thing of he knows the human response to this horrific things that he's done, but the fact that he can have so much casualness to it gives him power over the people that he's shocking. And so he controls that narrative because suddenly he's the person that can deal with it the best. And I think that even if that's a subconscious level of Nielsen, so it's not a comedy moment. And it actually really surprised me when people found that funny, those moments funny, because Lewis and I had dealt with these words for 5 years and then never found them funny. Had always been like that's a horrific thing to say in this moment. But it's, and I don't think people found it funny in a ha-ha way. I think they found it funny as like, I can't believe that someone's saying.
Right. It's just, I think they find it funny because it's just so ridiculous to actually say that about a human being.
Mm-hmm.
And just how casual he throws it away. Just the severity of the stuff that he's done and the way that he just casually throws these things away, but then also takes the time to say, I actually do wish I had remembered their names. Like, it's really, the juxtaposition of all of that is really interesting to me. And I guess it's baffled psychologists for 40 years now, I guess, right? So
I mean, I often wonder if Instagram and Twitter and social media would have been around, pre-Nielsen, whether the narcissistic traits that come with social media, would he have, how would have that? Because that's a perfect tool for his narcissism.
Narcissism, yeah.
You see it all the time with people you follow on social media.
Yeah.
And, those narcissistic tendencies I found really interesting. And actually, there's a lot of frightening stuff about Nielsen that I think that everyone could recognize in themselves because of social media and the rise of narcissism. I mean, I'm not saying people recognize themselves in terms of the more extreme nature of his crimes, but just in the manner in which he saw him. We all see ourselves as the sort of hero or lead character of our own stories, and that's what he did. He just changed the narrative to make himself a hero, whereas some of us don't have that narcissistic trait, I think.
Well, you see at the end when he says, call it Nielsen. This whole thing has been about Dennis Nielsen. To Nielsen, the whole thing has been about Nielsen. And that's the moment of Brian saying, it's not about you. It's actually, this is a warning for society. It's not a celebration. You're not the hero of this piece. You're the piece of when I'm not writing this book. Moment. Yeah, it's a great moment, and Jason plays it so brilliantly, and then
and happened. I mean, that's the other thing. We often get asked like how much of this is dramatic license, and the truth is, if we told you what was dramatic license, you'd be shocked, because the reality is a lot of the dramatic license is making the stuff that happened actually work for TV.
For the story.
Because, the Cole Stotter story, as sad as it was, when he found out, and we kind of had to change it slightly, but the police went round his house because someone had done what happened in the drama. Someone had called and said, someone in my therapy group, I think he's a victim of Nielsen, which is essentially what we did. The police went around his house and told him everything, and he didn't remember it. He was just like, no, it's not me. And then they said to him, what about the sleeping bag? And as soon as they said that, he had a seizure. He literally fell to the floor and had a seizure.
Yeah.
They had to get an ambulance to take him to hospital. And then after that, he said that all of the memories, as soon as they said that moment, because he remembered being choked in the sleeping bag, all of it came flooding back to him. All these suppressed memories, because he'd had therapy over the years and was told that it was a dream, and all of that stuff came back. And, I think we tried with Kelly and, we tried to write that, didn't we, Luke? And it
just felt like
real. It felt
that's
like,
the thing is, one of the discussions we had, I remember me and you having a debate over it, because I really wanted to show the truth of that moment, but very, very correctly and very astutely, Lewis was like, we cannot shoot that truthfully and it not feel sensational and melodramatic. It doesn't matter if it happened. It won't read as this actually happened, because someone hasn't got Google out as they're watching it. It would just feel like we've over-egged the moment that didn't. And sometimes truth is stranger than fiction, and you've got to moderate it in order to have a sense of it. And so, correctly, we took
the essence of what Cole went through and just tweak that moment so that we didn't lose any of, I don't think, we didn't lose any of the reality of what Cole went through and his journey, which was, incredibly sad.
Yeah.
But it kind of fitted the whole more. And that was the challenge, really, making things. That's where we changed things. And that's the kind of things we changed, was actually to just, lessen the reality to make it fit and to make it more acceptable to an audience to go with. But everything else, I mean, Carl was spat at and you know, for example, Cole, when he walked out of the courtroom, as we had, someone shouted homophobic rhetoric at him and spat at him as he left the courtroom. So we didn't have the spitting, but we had some people shouting homophobic remarks at him. But that happened,
it was incredibly effective. You could see just the shame on his face. And
Laurie's performance.
Laurie's performance is sensational. Such a great young actor. He's going to have such a.
Well, and that was a you find because your friends were in a play with him. And we went and had Luke had sort of said, I've just been and watched this play and this is an amazing lad. And so we went and had a beer with the cast, didn't we? Just to sort of like meet him. We weren't telling him we were thinking of him for a role or anything, but we just went and had a beer with the cast and sort of met him to meet him face. And he was lovely. And then we brought him in and read, and then we offered him. He was just outstanding. We didn't even see anyone else.
It's a revelation.
Luke's network of actors is.
Having been an actor for 15 years, I've got a kind of a pool of people that I know of, which I can say, hey, and also you can get like not Laurie, but like in the future, I'm going to get some favors done, and say, come on, do it.
Well, you did on this.
You
did on this. We got we got Al Batt, who plays one of the police officers, who just came on for no money whatsoever. And was across the whole job, but because he's such a great actor, and Luke, you did Halo with him, right? Is that where you guys met? The Halo film, And because of that, he came, and because he was so good, as we were working through, we could throw more. So that opening scene where Peter J walks through the police station, and it's a one shot moment where he walks in and he says hello to Al, and then.
Definitely noticed cinematography. Absolutely.
Well, that wasn't scripted. I realized as we were filming, because my editor Sasha, who's my right hand man when I'm filming stuff, was putting stuff together, and we were chatting. And I remember watching the first 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and realized that it was too quick. He used to go from the house straight to Cranley, didn't he, Luke? And so me and Luke were chatting, and I was like, look, if I can try and find an hour in the day, in the morning, to do a scene, the idea of it being a one shot was purely because we had an hour. So it's like, we got an hour to shoot a scene, let's just do it in a one-er. And we had a great cinematographer and a great camera operator on that day called John Hembrough. And
it's a great thing working with Lou. You kind of sometimes you'll just get a phone call at 9 a.m. saying, I need a scene. I might have an hour. Get on your,
Well, you came to set. You came to set for that one, didn't you?
Yeah. He's like, come on, write it for me. I'm like, okay, cool. It's nice, actually. It's kind of makes you feel.
You can only do that on, I could do that on this because it was ours. I can't do that on a job where I'm employed by a writer of, who's not a friend, who is an employer, I suppose. Whereas with us, we've been on it for 5 years. I kept saying to people, because if someone was like, you don't have time to do that, I'd be like, I've waited 5 years to make this. I want to leave this at least knowing I've given it everything I've got. And if I've had to drop something else for something I believe in, and it's a massive failure, then that's on me and Luke, and that's fine. But so it was that relationship was great to be able to, Luke, and you came to set quite a lot. I would text you. I'd text Luke and be like, we're doing this tomorrow. I think you should just come and just be around in case anyone or we need to write anything or change anything. But,
it's a great way to work as well. Yeah.
I mean, it's unusual, though. I mean, it is unusual.
That's what I was going to point out. Yeah, it's not very often you get the writers on set. But yeah, that's fantastic. That you can sense the dedication behind it, behind the camera.
One of the things is for me the most important thing. And I know this is for Lou. I can write a brilliant poetic script. If an actor can't say it, there's no point it being brilliant. My only job is to make sure that the people that are working on it when I'm not there understand it, and it's become clear to where they need to go or what they need to do, and they can say it and it feels good in there. Having been an actor for so long, I know that you can get these great scripts that feel so written, and sometimes you just can't piece thought to thought or just get the lines out. But so my passion is to have a script that actors just go, yeah, I get this. I get where I'm going with this, and now I can do it. And it feels like it can be their words. I think that's the most important thing. And so sometimes I failed at that, and Lou was like, "You got to come down here because I think actually if we need to change a line, and or change a scene even." And that's what's going to happen. I think that's the great thing about filming is it's such a collaboration that you can't be precious.
I think there's the old saying that all sort of filmmakers get taught, and that's why it happens in film. It doesn't happen much in TV, and on this occasion it did. Is the age-old saying of a film is written 3 times. It's written as a script, and then on the floor it's rewritten, and then in the edit it's rewritten, is true. And I think what happens, and I think that happens in film because a director takes over a script. So on the floor they do what they do, and in the edit they all come back together and they try and find what the film is, and that's organic and that's filmmaking. And I think the problem is in television, and it's not a problem, but it's just a way of working, is it's written once, and then the idea is that you go and film exactly what's written, so there's no rewrite there. But sometimes that things aren't working, but you can't, not allowed. And then what happens is you're trying to rewrite the 2 stages that instead of 1 stage at the end, you're trying to rewrite all of it in the edit. And that's because I think some writers aren't on set and they're nervous and they don't want the words changed. They want to see their words. But the thing about shooting is I'm seeing the words before the edit, so I'm able to know or have instinct to what's working and what's not working. And not everything does work. And some writers are really great at allowing you. I mean, I worked for years with Sam and John on Humans, and they were very hands off in that sense that they, as long as you knew what the essence of the scene was and you weren't changing. And I'm not talking about changing all the lines. I'm just saying, a scene is blocked and written a certain way, and then you get on the floor and you have to respond to the instincts of the actors if you've cast well. And, that's kind of important, really. And that's what this was. That's what filmmaking, I think, is. And that's what this was. It was very much, we very much rewrote the script in the shoots, partly because of time and money as well. But, we were rewriting as we were filming in terms of we were responding to what was happening, so that when we got into the edit, it was actually about finessing the story and just that rewrite in terms of the extra additional choices we made. So, for example, the original piece opened with a sequence of Nielsen as a young boy on a beach, going into the water to drown himself, because that was something he used to do.
That gets into my next question, actually. Seeing as we're talking about the relationship between writing and directing. I mean, oftentimes biopics revolve around notorious murderers. We go often into the origins of how they came to be. But I mean, what I actually really liked was the way that you guys managed to kind of sidestep around that and focus on the Nielsen that committed the murders rather than the Nielsen who would go on to commit the murders. So that was my question. How did you, was that a conscious decision by you guys, or was it kind of like a time and money thing where you just didn't have the time and money to pull it off?
It was conscious, but it wasn't through lack of investigation, if that could fit into, so over 5 years, I think, obviously you try and, I think both of us, almost like Brian Masters did in 1983, both Lewis and I tried to figure out the conundrum that is Dennis Nielsen and the case of Dennis Nielsen. But as we got closer to it, I think we consciously said to each other, actually, that Nielsen can't have a point of view. And it got to and even we shot things that were from Nielsen's point of view. And in the edit, I remember Lewis calling me and saying, we're going to have to cut all of this section because it feels like we're giving him a voice. And it's right. We didn't. What I love about the show that we've on the final edit is we don't give him a voice. We give him a voice through other prisms of people such as Brian or Peter, but we don't give him the platform to give his own opinion. And actually, to the point of episode 3, at the end of the last episode, and he's saying, when is it my turn to get to tell my story? And that's not the right, he doesn't have that right, because he didn't give any of the victims their right to tell their version of the story. So I think consciously, through the 5 years and periods of investigating if that should be part of our drama, we ended up figuring out that actually it isn't a story that we wanted to tell.
But it's also that it's why he did it is such a huge question. And, the makeup of how a serial killer becomes a serial killer is kind of, that's what the book is. That's what, and Killing for Company has its own I think it has a chapter at the end, correct me if I'm wrong, Luke, called Answers, which kind of is a whole chapter about why Brian Masters thinks that Nielsen did it. But it's just that. It's why Brian Masters thinks there's no equation for us to put on screen. This equals this equals this equals this. So it kind of wasn't really interesting. The bigger questions that interested us were, how had he got away with it for so long? Why had nobody beyond the families of the victims noticed? What was going on in society? How did the people that were closest to him not have any idea that he was doing what he was doing, given that he lived in a very sort of suburban middle class environment of North London? And those were the kind of questions that I think I was pulled in for. And a lot of that, and I think that what Luke did, and its strength when Luke came to me about doing this, was he'd written a draft very early on, and it started, not too dissimilar, but there was other characters and things, but it started at the same point, which was, the first episode is the day of the arrest. And that's great. And then the conversations we had when we were developing it were, do you show flashbacks? And we immediately were like, no, because, the only person that was there during the murders themselves, or during the scenes because we spoke about having a scene in a pub where he meets somebody, all those moments, the only person that we've got that information from is Nielsen. And that whole drama is about questioning what he's saying as a narcissistic man who changes his own narrative, who contradicts himself on a regular basis. So it would be unfair to put anything flashbacky in there or anything that kind of accounted the meetings and murders themselves, because we only have it from Nielsen, and we don't trust Nielsen. Is that the whole thing we're kind of saying with this thing, is you can't quite trust him because he changed his story, contradicted his story. He was an
unreliable narrator, essentially.
Exactly.
Yeah, he really is, yeah.
And the whole drama is Brian and Jay trying to get beyond that to find some form of the truth, to bring closure in whatever manner they're trying to do it. So I think we knew, and the only scene we had that was, in the end, in the shooting scripts, the only scene we had which delved into that was the opening. So the original opening, as I was saying, was Dennis as a boy on the beach going into the water and drowning himself. And that's what he used to do. And it was just, we never explained it in the drama, apart from, I think there was a comment, wasn't there, in the second episode where he used to talk about the drowning boy. So like, it was only in Ep 2 that made sense of the opening. And we knew we shot it really early we shot for 6.5 weeks. It was really tight. And that day we shot the shoot because of the weather, because we couldn't put a little boy in the water. And we had two lads that did it, and it was a great, beautifully shot sequence. And, we just watched it and it just felt wrong. It felt subjective. It felt like the rest of the series doesn't really go there. I think we'd kept it in the script because it was a beautiful way to open a show, boy going into the water and then disappearing and then drowning and then
kind of abstract
it was like an abstract quality
Absolutely,
to it.
Yeah.
And it was beautiful as it was. I mean, we knew before we'd even started filming that we probably weren't going to use it. And then, so we filmed versions of openings as we were going. And then in the end, in the edit, because we'd had all this access to stock footage during our research process, I was chatting to Sasha, and I'd always wanted to open each episode, and we didn't do it in the end. But the idea was, on most TV shows, you have to create recaps of what happened in the episode before. And I'm not a massive fan of recaps. And I thought with this, what we could do that would be interesting if we had to do them was to do recaps with the real stock footage. So we don't use any of the footage from the show, recreate kind of 30-second news broadcasted kind of recaps so the audience know where they're at with the real footage without us having to go showing scenes from the drama. And that idea we never did for cost reasons and other implications. But when we were doing that, I said, why don't we open what was missing in episode 1? That was in episode 2 and in episode 3. But what was missing in episode 1, particularly for the first 30 minutes of episode 1, before you meet the Sinclairs, was the victims and an understanding of who he was preying on and the world he was operating in. And so Sasha, my editor, basically, we came in on a Sunday and I just said, look, we need to try and do a sequence with the stock footage to show 1983 and the victims were people that came down from northern parts of the country to find work, that were displaced, that were vulnerable, and then were taken advantage of. And so, and that sequence it took a long, we did a really rough version that was a minute long. And immediately when we reshowed episode 1 with that in, it changed the whole episode. Everyone went, wow, okay. Because immediately what you do is you put the victims front and center.
Well, you open the conversation of, this is what this show is about. Never forget what this show is about. And you may see a serial killer who is saying things that make you laugh because it's ridiculous, and also you're intrigued by, but never ever forget it. What's brilliant about that opening is it just frames the entire series of saying this is the human cost of Nielsen. These people are, and it also shows that society has a part to play in Nielsen's crimes, is the fact that our streets are lined with people that have become invisible to the rest of society.
Vulnerable.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. And I think you guys, you did a fantastic job in that first episode where you kind of set out your mission statement in the first 15 minutes, where, Peter J, after all of Nielsen's kind of like word vomit and I guess admission, Peter J asks him the question, why? And, Nielsen answers with, I was hoping you can tell me that. Like you guys kind of like really set out your intentions as to where it was going to go.
The great thing about that was it was Ronald Moss that says it. It wasn't Peter J, and that's his own lawyer. And in the but the truth is, his own lawyer said that. His own lawyer didn't. His own lawyer in the first meeting in the transcripts turns around and says, "Can I ask why you did this?" Like the law. That's how unusual and how. Serial killers have become kind of commonplace in terms of our consciousness as a world nation, nation of worlds. That's not the right terminology, but you know what I mean. As a world body, we're very aware of serial killers. But in 1983, serial killers just weren't the thing they are now. They very much existed, but they were never. We'd had. And in the UK, we just had the Yorkshire Ripper the year before.
Yes.
But that in London, it felt like, that's a northern thing. So it was so uncommon. And I think
it's even mentioned in your script from memory, right? Very briefly, someone mentions.
It's about the insanity plea. It's Chambers mentions the insanity plea that. Because the year before, Sutcliffe.
It won't wash with Sutcliffe. It didn't wash with Sutcliffe. It won't wash here. Yeah.
No, it was fantastic. Go on, Luke. Sorry, were you about to say something?
Go on. Yeah, it's true.
I'm aware that we've just been talking nonstop, and we've probably answered one of your questions.
Yeah. No, I'm totally conscious of time, and we're getting to the end of it.
I'm just aware that we may have you've probably had 10 questions. We've only answered 2.
No, absolutely. You guys have been answering questions as so I'm kind of crossing off future questions because you've already answered it. But you guys are great interviewees in that way, so thank you so much. I have one more kind of question. Mainly for you, Lewis. But something that really stood out to me was the score. And your composer, I think her name is Sarah Warne from research that I did. It really reminded me of. Have you guys seen Joker? Hilda.
Hilda. Who did Chernobyl as well?
Chernobyl, yeah, absolutely. And it really reminded me, with the strings. I love strings and scores. It's absolutely sticks out. And I think, music plays an absolutely important part in any show, any TV, any movie. When you're directing a series like Des, did you give your composer any direction as to how you want specific scenes to be scored to evoke certain feelings, or did you just kind of trust in Sarah to deliver?
Bits of both. Firstly, I've worked with Sarah for years. We met at film school, and she did my graduation film, Charlie Says.
Nice.
And I think she did another film I did at film school. But and then I brought her into Prey, which was one of the first things I did where I could bring a composer in, and then onto Humans, and we just built that relationship. And then before I did Des, I did a thing called Dark Money for the BBC in the UK, which was a very dark thing about a boy who goes to America to be in a big film and comes back and has been sexually assaulted by the producer, and it looks at a family taking a payout. And it was the first time I worked with Sasha, who's my editor, and I brought Sarah and Sasha together. And what we did on that, we kind of repeated on Des, which was I try and bring Sarah in as early as possible and talk about music with her and Sasha, because what happens is Sasha's editing as I'm filming. So he's using temp music, and ideally I'd prefer him to be using temp music that either me, Sarah, and him have kind of agreed that feels like the right tone, or things that Sarah has kind of scored as sketches, which is, that's what Hans Zimmer does. Him and his team will sketch 40 minutes worth of material for the rough cuts. Because I listen to a lot of music and scores when I'm storyboarding, and I've got lots of Hans Zimmer sketchbook stuff, which is really interesting.
Interstellar. Interstellar's my favorite soundtrack of all time. So.
But the sketchbook for Man of Steel is great because it is just like 40 minutes of just going through the different moods. So Sarah does that. She kind of gives us themes, and then I suppose the way it works really. I mean, look, I don't have a musical bone in my body. I can't play an instrument, so I have to trust people like Sarah. But Sasha is more musically insightful. But what I do know is emotion, and so that's the conversations I'm having with her. So Sasha is delivering cuts every day to me. I'm seeing a version of a scene we shot 2 days ago. Some of it has music, some of it doesn't. The general vibe is that when you get the first assembly, there's more music because he's cutting a scene. So generally he'll play with music, and then when you put it all together, you realize you've got too much music because you've been looking at it singularly, not as a whole.
Yeah.
But Sarah is across those conversations, and what we did on Des was we meet early in the process before I start filming, and we create a bin of what I would call temp music that is within our world. So on this, there's a lot of Trent Reznor was in the temp bin. There was a lot of stuff from Red Riding. So there's a British 3-part drama called Red Riding, and one of those had a really incredible score. I mean, they're all brilliantly scored, but I think one in particular we use those as kind of references just for things. And then Sarah kind of totally doesn't usually listen to what we put on. She asks for the scene without the music, but she knows because she's helped us pick the things that we're using, that the vibe of what it is we're looking for. And then it's just a conversation. She delivers music to us as we're editing, and when we finish, and then we give notes, and then at some point we show an exec producer, and exec producers usually have notes on music because music is a real thing that, you could cut a film and put 2 different scores on it and it gives you 2 different emotional outputs. So it's music is really important. But we've not had that many problems because I think that's because Sarah comes in really early. I mean, she's brilliant, and string is one of the things that she uses a lot. I think if you look at all our music, Charlie's, everything I've ever done with her, there's 2 things I think are things that she plays a lot with, and that's vocal. So some of her stuff has a lot of vocal in it, even if the audience aren't aware it's a vocal. There's a vocal in there, and there's vocals in Des, and then string. Those 2 elements are things she plays a lot with, and live string. But yeah, she's brilliant. She's brilliant. And the music in Des is, it's understated. It's, at no point in the mix does she ever say, can you push my music more? Cause it's about, actually the music in Des is actually sitting quite low more than it would in a film for say, because of the nature of it. And she has no ego about that. She was brilliant at sort of making sure that it sat in and didn't feel. And then the other thing we did on Des, which I think really helped, is that the sound designer, Nico Medic, who I've worked with again at film school, he did my film Echo. He and Sarah worked together before that, and we brought him in. Sarah said, should we bring someone like Nico in? And we brought Nicola in, and he worked with her and created all of the atmospheres with her music in mind, so that we could literally, sometimes you think you're hearing music and you're not, you're hearing Nico's sound design. And that was really interesting in the mix to realize at times that we could transition from music to sound design. And that was, again, and if I'm being honest, it helped that we had the lockdown and we had COVID, because what it meant was we all stood down. And actually the reality of that was that none of the creatives stood down. Nicola and Sarah kept working. So actually what happened was, when we finally re-picked up and went into the mixes, they'd had a lot longer to work on something that they'd only got a week to do. They spent 6 weeks working on because they had nothing else to do, during lockdown. And so I think that helped. I'd be naive if I said that didn't help, that they had much more time to perfect those kind of moments. Sorry, that was a really long-winded way of answering your question.
No, absolutely. That was fantastic. Where I really noticed the music kind of kick in and really, really helped with the scenes was where Peter J is really kind of grappling with just how not amazing the justice system is. Like, leaving leaving people off the indictment, leaving victims off the indictment is just something I couldn't imagine any law enforcement officer going through at all. So I really wanted to, you guys mentioned, you guys talked about already, and I'm closing it out here because, you guys have given me so much. I really appreciate it.
That was a pleasure.
Pleasure, absolute pleasure. Yeah.
You guys really honed in on, you talked about the lawyer and how surprising that was, just a moment of him to ask why. Something that I really notice a lot in TV and film is courtroom etiquette. I practice law as well, so it's really interesting to see courtroom etiquette done well. And you guys really, really must have paid attention, because it was, no one's going up and, actually going to places in the courtroom where they're not supposed to be, which happens all the time. And you guys just absolutely hit it out of the park. So I just wanted to commend you for that.
Well, I mean, I can't I'd storyboarded the whole thing with the lawyers doing the American thing where they get out, and they stand in front of the jury. I literally storyboarded the whole thing pretty much that way. And on day one, we were really lucky that one of our essays, and ironically, Pip Torrens, who plays Lawrence, Ivan Lawrence, has been in that courtroom and been a lawyer in that courtroom, because that courtroom is probably the only courtroom in London that kind of replicas for a Crown Court in London. He'd been in there 5 times and played a lawyer. And I remember the first setup, I was like, right, so this is how it's going to play. And you're going to come here. We'll shoot both of you from here because you'll both come and do it. And as I kind of sort of like spieled off the way we were going to achieve the scenes, they all just turned around. And one of the essays as well, one of the essays behind Lawrence, there's a sort of guy with grey hair. He was an ex-lawyer who now just does essay work. And he was called Ian, I think. But Pip and Ian, and I think someone else in the crew went, Lou, British lawyers they just stand. You're thinking of America. And I was just like, man. So I literally sat there that morning going, shit, and having to basically add an extra 4 shots to the list, because I was like, man, we're not going to complete this now, because I was hoping to be able to move the camera from here to here to get both those. So it kind of created this whole thing of like, scene by scene trying to, but I could have said, oh, fuck it. Well, we could have said, oh, forget it, man. Let's just have them walk out. But I think everything had been done so truthfully. Everything in terms of... It all felt
so authentic up to that point. So it would have stuck out like a sore thumb.
For me, I just would have known that I'd like cheated the truth there, because people were like, no one will care if the drama, like no one will care, but I cared. I was like, no, everything has been so truthful to this point that we can't then, because it looks good, cheat that moment. So that it became quite a stressful 4 days. That was the last 4 days before Christmas, and it was quite stressful because, every night I had to sit with Mark and re-storyboard, because our way of achieving the day had kind of, it wasn't going to work, because the idea of using the same angles, but the one lawyer sits and one comes back, and was just, out of the question. But
it does actually give, though, something so amazing to those sequences, because it's so still, because everyone is in their own individual box. It just makes the box that Nielsen is in, that center box that Nielsen just stands in or sits in, this place of utter danger for most of the people, or anger, or I'm just thinking about the fact that the courtrooms are so still and there isn't a lawyer walking around. It really gives a power to when Carl is standing in the box and Nielsen's there, because it's such a still courtroom. You really feel that awful power.
It feels like ice. It feels like it's very cold, and it's very there's nothing warm about it. There's nothing good happening when he's testifying. It's just, it feels like cold ice.
Yeah,
absolutely.
I'm just glad I didn't do that, because this podcast would be very different. We wouldn't be on this podcast. If I'd had them get up behind the desks and walk around, you wouldn't have liked it. You would have been like, man, they lost me in the courtroom. So
believe me. You would have, I would have been thrilled with Tennant alone. Trust me.
I mean, it's a big thing. Like, even just talking now, like, one of the big things I think that we have to do as filmmakers is you have to be adaptive, because that's filmmaking, and writers compromise all the time, directors need to compromise, but it's about less about compromise and more about adapting. especially in filmmaking, because, you know, you plan a scene in the glorious sun and you arrive that day to film and it's raining. Now, you can get hung up on the fact it's raining and not shoot a thing and be upset all day, or you can embrace what's there. And actually, you might get into the edit and go, wow, that added a whole extra thing that I didn't think it would add. And I think that's what I've learned over the years is you go with a plan. And it always comes down to, I don't know if you've ever seen the film Apocalypse Now, but there's a great documentary called Into the Hearts of Darkness.
Yeah.
Which was
Based
filmed
on a
by,
book.
So the documentary was filmed by Francis Ford Coppola's wife and documents the making of Apocalypse Now. And there's a great moment in it with Dennis Hopper when Dennis Hopper does a scene and he doesn't get any of the lines right. And Francis Ford Coppola's arguing with him, saying, Dennis, you didn't say any of the lines. Dennis is like, nah, screw the lines, man. Forget the lines. I mean, he's high as a kite. And Francis Ford Coppola says something to him in that moment where it's like, you can't throw the lines away unless you've learned them. And I kind of took that as a thing, and I talk about it a lot when I do any teaching, that is, you know, as a director, you have to plan everything, but that doesn't mean you can't throw it away. But you can't throw it away if you've not done it. You can't be adaptive and creative and free and explore things if you've not got the foundations of what it is you're doing and done the work. And so I think that in the courtrooms, for example, is a big example of that. You know, we did the work and then you come across these issues, these problems, and you can adapt. You can throw away the work because you've done it and you know, you can use bits of it and know what's important. But, you know, for filmmakers listening out there, I think being adaptive is something you have to develop and learn over time, but it's crucial to
I think it's such a good word as well, because like you said at the beginning of what you just said there, Lou, is like compromise. And, you know, just my experience of Des, there's so many things there were so many moments, and we've talked about some of them here, where I felt like I had to compromise. And then watching it on screen going, actually, I didn't compromise. I was being, that's a positive change. And if what I wanted and what I fought for so long would have been the wrong choice, and it would have made it. So adaptive is such a more positive word of going, well, actually in the moment, you're not losing anything. Compromise sounds like you're losing something. Actually, what you're doing is you're moving something on as a collaboration because someone has seen something that your emotion or your connection to what your idea has stopped you from seeing. And it's a really interesting thing with experience of knowing what to fight for and knowing that actually when someone else gives you something, even though it feels unnatural in the moment, will be a positive thing on the long run. And I think adapting is actually a much better word than compromising. So I think that's a really good analogy.
This is give me the perfect in way to sort of plug my website. So I during lockdown, I created this project called Directors Now, which is a website, www.directorsnow.com, which is basically, I asked 105 filmmakers working in film, television, commercials, music videos, animation, and documentary, the same 5 questions about how they got their break, how they found their voice, all those 5 sort of the same questions, and turned it into sort of a 400-page book, which is free to download on the website. And I did that during the lockdown period whilst we were cutting Des is when I started it. But it talks about all the things we're talking about filmmaking process and that all of these directors talk about. But yeah, I figured I might as well give that a bit of a plug while I'm here because
it's worth a read. It's really interesting. It's got some amazing filmmakers on there as well.
It's all absolutely free. I did it because I wanted to give back, and the reason I did it is on the website. But I did it, and it was funded by the National Film and Television School, which is where I went, and so to make it absolutely free to anybody that wants to download. So if there's any people that listen to this that are interested in directing or filmmaking as a thing that they're interested in exploring further, beyond just being an avid watcher of film and television, but even if you are an avid film and television watcher, it's quite interesting to hear the stories of some of the people making the stuff you're watching.
Absolutely. One of
Sorry, I know I wasn't meant to plug that, but I just couldn't resist.
Lewis, I welcome it. Like one of our co-hosts, Matt Vella, he's a short filmmaker, and you know he would absolutely be stoked.
Matt, directorsnow.com. Get on there, download the book.
I will literally text him this as soon as we jump off. Trust me. So, final question: what's next for you guys? Are you staying in this particular genre, this very morbid genre? I don't know how you just finish this and go from something. Let's probably like the Moors murders or something. Like, what are you staying in this? Are you staying in this genre? Or are you going to something else entirely?
Go on, Luke. Do you want to go first?
I think no. Is the short answer is I didn't start to write Des because of my passion to write true crime. If a true crime story came my way that I felt passionate about, I wouldn't stop myself. The reason that I started writing Des was because it felt like there was a story that I needed to be told, and I wanted to tell, and not about Dennis Nielsen, actually about the wonderful Peter J that sacrificed a huge amount emotionally in order to unfortunately fail in his duty in finding 15 names, and also Brian's exploration in trying to figure out the unanswerable question of why someone does this, why a psychopath does what he does. So there is a sort of true crime idea that Lewis and I are working on developing at the moment. We won't tell you what it is, but it's another case that feels like it needs attention and feels like there's an angle of there are human beings that need to be shown on screen to show how incredible they are.
Fantastic.
So yeah, but apart from that, I just think so I've got a few things that I'm working on that are a little bit more fictional and a little bit more. But apart from the thing that I'm working with Luke. But
so
go on, Luke.
Season 3 of The Mandalorian, is that what you're saying? Seeing as you're already Lucasfilm connected?
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, like they know my number.
Your character. You could write a series for your character in the Last Jedi.
What, Canto Cop?
Yeah, Canto Cop.
Hey, listen,
the stories of the Canto Cops of, Hey, listen. What was that planet? What was that planet called? The one that was like Monte Carlo?
Hey, listen. Do you know what? I can say I don't know, and the reason I don't know is because, and I'm not.
You never read a script.
I didn't even read. I've never got a script. I got on screen. I got on set, and it was laminated. The script that I was going to be using that day, which was given to me in my trailer. And it looked like a CIA file where everything had been redacted apart from my lines. And I said to the people, "What does this line mean?" And they were like, "We can't tell you." And I was like, "But who am I talking to?" And they're like, "We can't tell you." And I was like, "Should I just?" And so then I just got on this ship.
We should probably explain the sequence. So you're the main guy who's chasing John Boyega. As they need to kind of sit in the Monte Carlo city to try and find their ship before they're rescued.
Canto Bite is the name of the.
There we go.
And I should have known that with Canto Cop. But then Ryan Johnson just comes on set and is just like throwing lines at me, and I'm like, "What does it mean?" And then he's like, "It doesn't matter. Like, come on, just say the lines." And I'm like, "Because I'm not allowed to know anything." So
amazing.
I came off the set and people were like, what's the film going to be like? And I was like, I have no idea. I have no idea who's in it.
You called me though. I remember you called me literally as you were in the car on the way home, and you were like, you said this story, but you said, I just remember you being like, but who cares? I got to be on this machine in the air around green screen, directed by Ryan Johnson, and it's Star Wars. Like,
I walked into the set. This was the thing, is because I thought it was just going to be green screen, but I walked into the set and there was something else going on that was, and I grew up with Star Wars. I'm a Star Wars geek, and then so I walked into the lot, and my set was covered in a curtain, like a round curtain, and I had to walk into it. But I had to walk past an X-Wing, like an actual X-Wing.
Wow.
And I just kind of almost burst into tears because I was like, I didn't know they existed. I thought they were just computer generated, graphics. But to walk past an X-Wing and just go, my 5-year-old just wanted to jump on it and just get in it and go, meow, and I play in it.
Totally.
Yeah, I wasn't allowed, unfortunately. But yeah. So maybe I should write a Canto Cop series. That would be for Disney Plus.
I'd watch it.
I'd watch it.
Lewis, what's next for you?
I'm 2 weeks away from filming a new BBC One series called Time, which is with Sean Bean and Stephen Graham, which is about
amazing.
Yeah, which is about a guy. I don't know how much I'm allowed to say, but I think the press release essentially says it's about a guy. Sean Bean plays a guy called Mark who goes into prison. He follows that journey, and then Stephen Graham plays a prison officer. The scripts are great. It's written by Jimmy McGovern, who's one of my favourite writers.
My hero, one of my heroes. Yeah, absolutely.
So that's what I'm doing up to Christmas. COVID hopefully doesn't interfere too much or shut production down in any way. So we start filming in 2 weeks, and then lots of stuff in development. So lots of various projects at various stages of development, and me and Luke have got a couple of things. Kicking around, one in particular that you mentioned. But so I'm going to finish Time, and then hopefully either see what else is out there to sort of in the interim, because obviously development takes years. I mean, Des took 5 years, so it's
hopefully the next one doesn't take as long.
No, well, no, some of them can be much quicker. But and I mean, hopefully, look, I mean, I'm a Marvel nerd. That's my bag, and
me too.
I would love. At some point, once I've made my first film, and I would love to jump on that franchise. Whether it's the Disney Plus series that they're doing now, or whether it's a film down the line. For me, that's
dream job. Yeah,
absolutely, and what a company as well. So
totally. Well, guys, thank you so much for hanging late. I was like, hey guys, it'll only just be half an hour. No worries.
That's because of us.
You guys gave such great answers, and this interview was absolutely fantastic. So thank you so much for jumping in. Des is absolutely incredible. I think you can actually see, you can really see the amount of time and effort and passion and respect that you guys really afforded to it. And I think I've spoken to a few people who I've been kind of like raving about it at work, and I work for KPMG, which is an accounting company. It's got nothing to do with criminal law or anything like that. But so they're all kind of like looking at me like, oh god, this is so morbid. And I was like, no, just stick with it. Trust me, just watch it. So I've converted some friends, and they're going to watch it over this long weekend that we're having here in Australia. But it's fantastic. It's brilliant. So well done, guys.
Thank you for taking the time to talk to us. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you so much to Lewis, Arnold, and Luke Neal for joining us for that exclusive interview. That was awesome. I've listened to that. I've been sitting on that interview for about a week now, and I've listened through to it twice, dude. I love it. At the end, they talk about, because Luke starred in Star Wars: The Last Jedi, and he talks about how he got that role and like how exactly how it was on set in terms of like script, like what he received as a script, and it's going to be crazy. Matt, you haven't heard the interview yet, but the director Lewis calls you out by name. So
what did
context?
What did I do?
Context. Lewis has this website that he created during the lockdown period called directorsnow.com. And basically, it's just him going through a bunch of like pretty much interviewing a bunch of famous British directors, and just kind of like giving tips and advice on up and coming directors and stuff like that. And I'm just like, well, man, like our co-host Matt, like he would love that. And Lewis is just like, well, Matt, there you go.
There we go. You got me a connection to Hollywood. Thanks, man.
Absolutely. But guys, thank you so much for sticking around and listening to that Des interview. That was awesome. That was such a great experience for us and such a big get. So thank you again for listening, and thanks to Lewis and Luke for jumping in for that. Let's get into this week's episode, the upcoming attractions, what you guys are all here for. Let's get into our first trailer of the evening, Borat, subsequent movie film. I'm going to call it film, which changed its title, which is strange.
Yeah, well, I think this is a better title. One, I think the other one, I assume, was giving away what might be a prank at the end. Even though I still don't understand what a pornographic monkey is. But, I guess we'll find out. And also subsequent movie film, it sounds like something Borat would say. It's very within the language. So I have a feeling one of the challenges Borat this time around is going to have is, well, one, it's going to a streaming platform rather than the cinema. And two, I feel like Sacha Baron Cohen has a little bit more of an obvious political agenda with this one. And I think his goal might be trying to win over the people that don't agree with him. I think a lot of sorry?
The release date is kind of telling, right? Like it comes out just before the election, right?
Right before the election. And I think, and also looking at This Is America, while he was clearly trying to appear to be fair for both sides, like he even got Bernie Sanders, like the more the telling ones were on against Republicans and getting, I think one or two of them got fired from their positions after the shit he got them to do. So I think he's been smart about it that way. I don't imagine it'll be appropriate however he does it. I do. The other thing I find really interesting is the ways you go about making a sequel about it's basically a prank show with a narrative. And how do you do that when everyone knows your character? Well, he dresses up as a complete other character. But I have a feeling what this trailer doesn't show us is that I think a lot of this film is going to be more about his daughter playing pranks, who I think, because we see a little bit of her, but I'm just thinking no one knows who the fuck this girl is. I still don't. She could easily get away with a lot more of these jokes, and she seems very integral to the plot. And I have a feeling she might be.
Wait, hold on. Plot.
Oh, plot. Yes.
In inverted commas.
Yeah. So that's my prediction. I also think there's going to be some sort of. I feel like they're going for an Ivanka Trump vibe. Well, she's got some junk in the trunk, you know what I'm saying?
She does.
I feel like they're going to go for an Ivanka Trump vibe with her character. But the main thing is this trailer, it wasn't hilarious. So I'm really hoping they're hiding a lot. And knowing them, they're going to do some fucked up shit. I just can't wait to see what happens. How do you follow up Borat, man? What are your thoughts?
How do you follow up Borat? Look, the trailer didn't really hit home for me as much as I thought it would. It was exactly what I expected, right? It's just a bunch of shit. I say this, but I'll be there. I'll be there day one.
Yeah.
I actually liked the old title though. It fits with the first one because the first one's full title is Borat: Cultural Learnings of America to Make Benefit Glorious Nation of Kazakhstan.
I love that. You had to read that. I saw your eyes get down your computer.
There's no way I memorized it, but just the insanely long title, dude. I really dig that. But I also really like subsequent movie film. I keep saying film. Why?
It sounds like a joke. That's why it's.
Yes.
I like it. It's to the point.
Well, that's what I think. The Deadpool sequel should have made that approach with Untitled Deadpool sequel. It shouldn't have been called Deadpool 2. Call it Untitled Deadpool sequel because that just would have fit so much better for that particular movie.
Dude, you raise a great point. A movie franchise all about breaking the fourth wall and being meta.
Yeah,
that was the easiest opportunity for a joke they could have made. How do you just get away with just calling Deadpool 2? Missed opportunity.
That was such a lame title. But look, I'm excited. I'll still see it, obviously, and it's going straight to Amazon Prime. So kudos to Amazon for picking this up and for having the balls to release this so close to the election. And it's quite clearly a political sort of stance and political move. So kudos to Amazon for actually taking that hard edge and line. Honestly, that is for a big studio. I think that should be kind of commended.
Yeah, I guess it just comes down to how far will they go? So Borat, and even I think the best example of his style of comedy besides This Is America would be Bruno. Bruno's character literally shows people being homophobic in a funny way, which is kind of hard to do. And Borat, I think, is able to touch on a few other different things. I wonder how, I know the trailer's got that one little scene. He goes, "What's worse, the virus or Democrat?" And the guy's like, "Democrat." That's not hilarious. It's a good observation, but it's not hilarious. I'm really hoping there's something big. It'd be really a big shame if the sequel just comes out and it's I've got really high I'm setting the bar really high for this film just because the first one was so good. In terms of laughs.
My expectations are kind of somewhere in the middle. I mean, look, nothing's going to permeate pop culture as much as the first one. It's just not. It's just I think we should kind of set our expectations accordingly.
I think my expectations are medium, but my hopes are high, I should say.
Yes, same, literally the same. But look, all right, let's get our thoughts on something that's a little controversial, right? Let's talk about The Witches. The Witches is a movie based off a Roald Dahl book. Did you have any connection with the 1990 The Witches?
Yeah, I remember seeing it as a kid. I remember the toes
Did it scare the
scene.
shit out of you as well?
Well, everybody says that. I don't have strong memories. I saw it only once in primary school because, like, I think a teacher was sick or something.
We watched it in primary school as well.
Yeah, I think a lot of people did. And I just remember the toes freaking me out. And I remember as a kid always thinking witches were kind of kooky, like, because the only witch I could really think of in film was, like, The Wizard of Oz. And when I saw this take on witches, I remember even as a kid, I was, like, impressed. I was like, this is a good direction to take film. And I know it's hard to believe that, like, 8-year-old Matt Bella had these type of thoughts, but I did. I've been critiquing movies since a young age. But I remember thinking, like, this is a good direction to take this stuff. But obviously, there's, like, no other witch films. Like, how many witch films can you think of? There's, like, season 3 of American Horror Story, and that's all I can think of. Okay, fair enough. But, like, witches are, like, the bad guys and the villains. I don't know. But I don't have a strong emotional connection like a lot of other people do. Do you at all?
I don't have a strong emotional connection to any movie unless it's in my top 10 of all time. Like, you know, like if someone were to remake Seven, right? David Fincher's Seven, then I'd be like, okay, what the fuck are you doing, dude? But like, you know, anything kind of like outside of my top 10, top 15, something like that, I don't really have like that big of a emotional kind of like, I wouldn't have like that big of an emotional, I guess, reaction, you know, like I'm just like, oh, they're remaking it because like this is something that we talked about.
But were you a big fan of it back then? I want to know.
I'm not going to say fan. I'm going to say watcher. Like we definitely had it on videotape, on VHS, and we definitely watched the scene where, you know, Angelica Houston rips off her face and reveals herself to be the Grand High Witch. Like, you know, when I say we, I mean me and my brother. Like we definitely watched that shit. Plus, it's also like, you know, Roald Dahl's books have values in them that I think are really important to teach children. Like, you know, like this one, I believe it's all about greed and the importance of like being a good person, like, which I guess is the point of all of these books, right? Like Willy Wonka, it's the importance of being a good person, right? Like of being, of holding
a lot of
morally
children's
correct
films.
values.
Yeah, a lot of children's films go that route. Was The Witches always like a chick flick? I feel like
the lead was a young boy.
Okay. See, I remember very little. Like something I noticed with this trailer that I don't remember was there a big plot about people being mice?
Yes.
I don't remember that at all. Hey.
Okay, so what would happen is the witches would turn children into mice, and then I believe they used to eat them. Like I think that it's very dark when you put it like that, to be honest.
Oh, I do remember thinking it was dark. And I know it's got a reputation for scaring kids. But
100%, dude. Like the practical effects in that first one, which we can kind of get into it, which kind of like disappoints me about this movie, right? Like, I mean, the practical effects in that first film are kind of unrivaled, and like they really hold up super well today.
Right.
So when I see the trailer for this, and it's just a bunch of CG bullshit, and I'm just like, I don't know. Like, I have a lot of confidence in Anne Hathaway. I think Anne Hathaway is a great actress, and I think she can pull this off because she's got the. You know, she can be very nice. I feel like she can be very nice on the surface, but very mean-hearted and mean-spirited on the inside kind of thing if she wants to be. Like, she can turn it on. And I think as the Grand High Witch, I think she's kind of gonna nail that, you know?
I feel... So I am not aware of the current zeitgeist, the current crowd knowledge of it. I've been a bit off the net lately because of the whole move and stuff. But watching this trailer, I remember thinking, my thought process was, oh, they're remaking The Witches. That's probably not going to be that great, but I don't really care too much about it either way. Then I went to, oh, the cast is really good. Then I went to, the way it's all coming together, it doesn't feel like a generic cash grab.
I thought you were going to say something else. I thought after you said, then I went to the cast, I thought you were going to say, because this is the curveball that really might swing this around for me, I thought you were going to say, then I went to the director, because the director is Robert Zemeckis, who directed Back to the Future and Forrest Gump.
I did not know that. Wow.
Yeah,
it feels very confident, so it makes sense that 100%. A confident director like that would be put to this. Honestly,
he's absolutely one of the best directors working alive today, I think.
Fuck yeah. Well, dude, like the cast alone was like, look, there are shit films with great casts. I mean, Cats. Kind of, if you ever need a reminder, there's Cats.
That's The Godfather. That's The Godfather.
The amount of times I think about I can't remember what podcast episode it was, but you were like playing devil's advocate and Cats hadn't come out yet. And you're like, look, I'm not saying it's going to be good, but you look at this director, the cinematographer, that
he directed The King's Speech, which won Best Picture. Like, I don't understand.
Like, you're right. It had its ducks in place to be incredible. But what I tend to, ever since then, I always say now when it comes to a lot of stuff is like, the make or break thing for any film is the vision. It doesn't matter how great the team is, doesn't matter how everything is. If the original direction by the director or studio isn't like at least on some level awesome, then everything else is just gonna just fall suit. And that's what happened with that movie. But like something like The Witches, you've got something as your standard. So I got a question for you to loop back to what I was saying. Do you know how most people are taking this? Because I know there's some passionate fans about it. Are people positive? Are they negative? Are they on board? Do you know?
So, sorry, it just got really hot in here, so I just turned my fan on, and then I realized, nope, I can hear that in the background, and it's not going to happen. I've spoken to probably only one person about this, and she loves these movies, like, you know, the old school Royal Dahl movies. Like, she loves the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
Bro, I love James and the Giant Peach. That movie
James and the Giant Peach is outstanding. Amazing stop motion. So she was like, what the fuck is this?
Oh.
Like, you know, like, her reaction was just like, what the fuck? But, like, you know, that was also kind of my reaction too. Like, I was like, what the fuck is this? But, you know, and it's the same with a lot of these things. Once I see who's behind the camera, then I'm just like, okay, you're right. Look, I'm devil's advocate. This might be fucking great. Like, you know, same way I did the same thing with Cats, right? Like, I was like, okay, this looks garbage, but the people behind the camera are pretty goddamn talented. So I'm just going to, I'm going to hold my breath a little bit, but I'm still going to be like, I don't know if this is. I don't know if this is going to be good.
Like
you know?
the fact that we're comparing it to Cats already is not a telling sign.
I don't think it won't be that bad. Like, interestingly, it's going straight to streaming. All right, it's a HBO Max exclusive.
I did not know that.
Yeah. It'll be out really soon. Available to stream on HBO Max in the United States on October 22nd, literally 10 days from now.
Bro, let's talk about this. We got to talk about this shit, right? You've probably noticed this too. But it's becoming really hard to do upcoming attractions lately because these fucking streaming...
Goddamn Warner Brothers.
Yeah,
goddamn you.
These fucking streaming platforms, what they're doing is, back in the day, the traditional standard thing is you announce a movie, maybe a year or two later, you get a teaser or trailer, and then about 6 months later, you get the movie. 6 to 9 months later, you get the movie. These streaming platforms, like, fuck that noise. They release a trailer and they go, by the way, it comes out in 2 weeks. It happens all the fucking time now. And like Borat, for example, we first heard like rumblings of it about a month ago. Then about a week ago or 2 weeks ago, we got the first trailer. And now we're getting it. I think next upcoming attractions episode, it'll probably be out.
Yeah, probably.
Which is, I guess, kind of cool for us because it means we always have shit to talk about.
Yeah. But like here's the trade-off, right?
It's crazy, right?
Movies like Black Widow, we've been talking about for fucking ages because it's been delayed, right? Like, you know, it's just like, it's been in the back of our minds because we've already talked about them on the episode. We talk about the trailer, but we haven't been able to talk about the movie because it keeps getting delayed. We still won't be able to talk about this movie for about 7 or 8 months.
Yeah.
Like, you know, it's just insane.
I think maybe the reason it's like this is the reason why advertising campaigns are so long is because they need to convince you to go to a physical location to buy a ticket so they can make money. Streaming platforms like, by the way, it's in your living room now. So maybe it means they can save money on marketing or something. Like Netflix will internally advertise within their own platform by giving you suggestions and shit.
It might also be that they don't need that big of a return to kind of like profit off it, you know? Like they don't need, you know, because like the longer you advertise something, the higher the potential return might be, unless it's something like, you know, 1998 Godzilla, where, you know, the advertising was everywhere and it worked against it. Like it was a very like famous case of like over advertising something. Literally, you know, advertising for 98 Godzilla was all over bus stops and buses and everything.
I remember they always said size does matter, and it was on their fucking
Yeah,
Cup
and
shit.
the general public was like, nope, fuck that noise. You know, I've seen signs of this plastered all over town. I'm good. You know, I've had enough of this. So yeah, like it might just be kind of like an opposite of that. You know, like they might not need this kind of like revenue that they would rely on cinema stuff.
Maybe.
I mean, you gotta think about HBO Max is also, it's owned by Time Warner, right? Which is much bigger than just their streaming platform.
I think when people talk about like the death of cinema and rise of streaming platforms, that's not an argument you hear a lot, but I feel like it could be telling of that. Anyway, sorry for the tangent. I just found that kind of interesting. Bring it up here.
It's not a tangent. It's fine. It's completely fine. I think when people talk about the death of cinema, I think actually what happened this week that might be a bigger nail in the coffin is that Regal cinemas across the United States closed this past week, which is huge because, you know, No Time to Die and all these movies, the Marvel movies got pushed back, and then Warner Brothers started pushing Dune back. So they're just like, you know, like Cineworld, the parent company, were just like, we're going to have to close. We've got no other option.
I'm glad you brought that up because here's a question I actually had for you that I forgot that I was going to ask you on air, which I'm glad you reminded me because I think this could be an interesting topic. But the one, I don't even know if it's an upside, but it's an interesting thing as an effect of everything. Now that all these big movies being pushed back to next year, a lot of films aren't coming out. Some stuff's going to streaming platforms. I can't believe Pixar's Soul is coming to Disney Plus. Not even premiere status. That blows my mind.
By the way, like that's something that else we can talk about. I love that they're not doing the premiere status with Mulan. It seems like they learnt their lesson.
Yeah.
But the review embargo for Soul just lifted. Dude, it is receiving glowing reviews. Like I'm pretty sure it's like at 100 already.
I called it.
Like 50 reviews. Yeah, it's just an absolute masterpiece, and I can't wait.
It's Pixar. They don't know how to make an okay film. They make great films, and they start from
The
there.
Good Dinosaur.
You know what? Compared to every other animated film that came out that year, it's pretty great. I'm not saying it's probably one of their worst films, but by that standard, it shits on like almost everything I'm seeing from DreamWorks, or shits on most. You're talking about 15-year-old, 20. I don't care if it doesn't matter. Look, back to, here's the question I have for you, right? What was I going to talk about? We were talking about,
so we're talking about the cinema closures.
Oh, right. Okay. So with everything, moving out and everything like that. So here's something that's going to be interesting. The 2020 Oscars.
Yeah.
So the entire level playing field has changed because this means Oscar season's probably not going to happen, or it might be changed.
Yes and no. Like before you do move on to your next point, yes and no, because the window has moved to get nominations in, right? Because the Oscars aren't until April this year instead of February. So I think the window is February. I think that's when it closes, or March or something like that. So like it's going to be interesting because there definitely are Oscars out there, and there is a conversation of what movies are going to be nominated for Oscars and what has what is in contention for Best Picture, because I'll get to this a bit later when I talk about the trial of Chicago 7, because maybe I'm just blowing my load here. But yeah, I've definitely seen a lot of buzz on Twitter and things like that about movies that have premiered at Venice already, because Venice did happen apparently. I didn't know about it
somehow.
But movies, exactly. And movies just premiered, and apparently they're getting great word of mouth. So.
Well, that's good to hear. I definitely didn't know that, but I'm just thinking, like, I wonder if this could be the year where some, I don't want to say shittier films, but like the type of films that would normally get overlooked might have a chance now. Because let's face it, the Oscars are political at times. Maybe not in terms of politics, actual politics, but like there is its own little inner circle. We all know what a typical Oscar movie looks like. There are certain things you can do to appease the Academy. It is an Oscar film is its own type of film. Yeah.
I'm going to call it right here, right now. Mark this down. The winner of the Best Picture this year at this year's Oscars will be The Trial of the Chicago 7.
Okay. You heard it here, folks. But one thing that does contribute to the Oscars is sometimes like the buzz, right?
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
Trial of Chicago 7, I'm not seeing that plastered on fucking billboards and shit. Obviously, it's not time for that to happen, but no film has been like that this year that I can think of. I think the biggest film campaign
We're
was
not in season yet, though, right?
Yeah.
We're like, it's still not Oscar quote season yet.
But
right?
just
Like,
even
I mean,
in
like
general, like when a film releases, you want to have buzz then. You want to bring back buzz later. Like, obviously, we live in special times, so things could be different this time around. No one really knows what the fuck we're doing. We're just sort of guessing as we go. But
I think once we get to December, we'll start seeing a lot more things. Like there's one called Nomadland, which is directed by Chloe Zhao, who did who is doing the Eternals for Marvel. There's another one directed by Regina King, which is getting a lot of buzz, called One Night in Miami. So by the time we get to December, I think we're going to see a lot more of those movies.
And I'm sure The Witches, unfortunately, probably won't be one of them.
Back to track. All right, man. Let's move on to our next trailer. This one is fucking bonkers, dude. Let's talk about Fatman.
I've got an interesting opinion on this film.
Go for it.
Fuck this movie. But
interesting.
And not just because
look, I love how I'm like, I don't have emotional responses to anything. I'm just like, very like, placid and shit like that. I have my daily dose of Matt to level me out.
I'm not saying fuck this movie because it stars Mel Gibson, who is racist and likes to like beat up his wife and shit, allegedly. Not because of that. Let's take that aside.
Separate the actor and the craft, right?
Let's separate the shitty actor from the shitty piece of art. Because
right.
I don't like the concept of this movie because few reasons. One, there's a new type of film that seems to be getting more and more popular that I don't like. And that is the movie that is trying to be so bad it's good on purpose. And I think the concept of, it's a little kid hiring an assassin to kill Santa. Yeah, I get it, right? It was probably done some after school specials sometime 30 years ago. But this is not you look at the execution of this film, it doesn't feel like a comedy. It feels like it's taking itself so fucking seriously. So it's opening itself up to these so bad it's good situations. This is the vibe I'm getting from it. And so all that kind of rubs me the wrong way. Yeah, from the trailer.
It's important that we remember that this is the trailer, right?
Yeah.
It could be the marketing.
It could be potentially, but that's part one that I don't like. And to be fair to this film, I feel that way about like other films that have been coming out and stuff. But two, here's a little minor gripe. It's called Fatman. He doesn't look very fat. He looks kind of average build. He just got like a big coat on. I know that's a minor gripe, but I thought I'd mention that too. And besides that, I kind of don't care for this film. I think the concept, I think it's like Sharknado. The concept goes, oh, cool. And then you're done. I don't think I'll even watch this one personally. I think it'll be shit because it's trying to be so bad it's good, but it'll just be bad.
That's interesting. I did not expect you to go there. I actually thought you would have been so on board with this movie because the ridiculousness of this it sounds right up your alley.
It does. It sounds like a total Matt Vella movie, but I think I'm just so much into that type of movie that I'm taking it personal, and I'm getting offended at seeing like these fucking these fucking fakes trying to steal my shit, they're trying to get in on this. Nah, like it's not going to be Up Against the Room or some shit like that, which I don't know. I feel like it's more like trying to compete with something like Sharknado or whatever, but whatever.
I don't even think it's that, like, I don't think it's that bad. Like, it's funny because you're on one side. I'm actually on the other side. I actually can't wait for this.
That's fine. That's fair.
Only because like it
wrong.
just looks so. Well, I mean, like, look, it might just come down to the trailer, but like the concept of this reminds me a lot of Futurama, which had the evil Santa Claus, right? Like like the and like I like the idea of an evil Santa Claus. Like when was that done in film, right? Like I mean, like we've got Santa Claus as
bad
movies.
Santa. Like it's not evil, but it's bad.
Yeah, I'm talking like murderous.
Yeah.
like this is it's fucking ridiculous. Like, and it looks entirely forgettable. I know I'm probably gonna forget it probably like 6 months later or some shit, but it looks like a good time. Like, you know, well, here's the thing, right? For me, it's okay. Mel Gibson, yes, he is a racist. He's not a very nice person, but he makes good movies. I'm not going to deny that, man. Yeah. Like, Hacksaw Ridge is a fucking masterpiece, dude. Braveheart is a goddamn masterpiece.
Will I buy him a beer? Probably not. Will I watch Hacksaw Ridge again? Probably.
Right, exactly. But the other hook for me is Walton Goggins. Walton Goggins is from a shitload of stuff, dude, including Django Unchained and Hateful Eight, Vice Principals. Like, he is
Tomb Raider,
yeah. Well, we don't have to remember that one. But like, he is working, you know, like, and I think he gives a fantastic performance in everything that he's in. First thing I saw him in was The Shield, with Michael Chiklis, who's the old TV show.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, like, this looks, I don't know, it looks fun. It looks ridiculous. It looks fun. It looks like a Sunday night movie. Like, you know how we used to go to Sunday nights because we didn't want to face the Monday that was coming. So we were just like, let's go watch a movie and see what's on. And like, this looks perfect for that. Like, I'm not, you know, again, I'm not emotionally attached to any movie unless it's outside my top 10, top 15. I might just kind of like get used to saying that because I think that's becoming more and more true the more I think about it, dude. Like, you know, we're about to cover a top 200 movie. Sorry. We're about to cover on feature presentations. We're about to reach episode 200, and we're going to be covering a top 10 movie of mine. And that is something that I think I do hold an emotional connection to. So if someone kind of like remade that or made a movie like that in this style, then I'd be kind of pissed, right? But like for this, it's just like, it's going to come and go, right? Like, you know, and I guess it's not the best attitude to have when you have a podcast where you review trailers and shit. But it's just kind of like, it's just going to be something that I see and I'm probably going to enjoy. And I'll be here talking about it after November 17th, which is when it releases.
Are you being paid to plug that release date, Zoheb? Like, what's going on there?
Yeah. Mel Gibson's got me on the take. He didn't call me a Jew.
Look, I think the one saving grace of this film could be, I think what'll make or break it is the action scenes. Because I don't know if they're going to swing so hard for the comedy. So you better make the showdown between Santa and Walter Goggins badass. If you can do that, you succeed. If you fail that, like, why are we coming to the film? I think the other like little issue for the film is, and this is maybe just it just feels like a missed opportunity. It's Santa versus an assassin. Just an assassin. Like, it's played by a great actor.
Though.
But like, shouldn't the you could get so much more mileage, you know, more like miles out of your vehicle if like you just made it like, make it he's fighting Frosty, make it he's fighting a disgruntled elf, make it like something, maybe it's fucking something like it's, I know, something else that's like royalty free, like fucking it's Santa versus Sherlock Holmes.
Like, you know, we don't know, right? But like, he might
Santa
be
versus Dracula.
Like,
oh, I would watch that. Santa versus
Let's
Dracula.
Let's move on. We've given this way
Sorry,
too
guys.
much time.
I'll be right back. I'm going to go write that script. Santa versus Dracula.
Dude, okay, look, that's getting cut out of the podcast for sure. All right, let's move on to something 100 times better. Let's move on to MANK. MANK is a movie that is directed by David Fincher, one of my Rushmore directors, top 4 of all time, man. You only need to listen to our 7 episode where we covered 7, which is my favorite movie of his. For me, it's like to get my kind of like thoughts on David Fincher. I think he is the Stanley Kubrick or Alfred Hitchcock of our time. Like, I think he is just one of the best directors alive ever. Like, honestly, like, he's just, you know, and like, just the fact that, you know, it's been, when did Gone Girl come out? 2014, right? Like, it's been that long.
Maybe. It's been a while, dude. I was doing my bachelor's back then.
Yeah, so. It's 2014 or 2015, one of those. But it's just, that's still insane to me that it's taken him 5 years to come up with another movie. I know that he's been doing Mindhunter since in between, right? So he did seasons 1 and 2 of Mindhunter. But it's time, dude. It's time for him to come back and just blow us away because I think this is going to be outstanding. We won't spend too much time on this. This is only a minute trailer. I know that there's probably going to be a longer one somewhere down the line, but essentially MANK is basically it's a true story about the screenwriter Herman Mankiewicz, who worked with Orson Welles in coming up with the masterpiece that is Citizen Kane, right? Something that is hailed as one of the best movies of all time. But it's about Mankiewicz's kind of like alcoholism and like him fighting his own demons and things like that. It's filmed entirely in black and white, which I think is an interesting choice. You know, like we saw movies like Roma, like that things like very modern films that really kind of like consciously make the decision to shoot in black and white. What do you think about that?
I feel like, so this is kind of like more of a general thing, but it applies to this part as well. This is such a unexpected choice for Fincher because I feel like the entire visual style that we can take from this trailer, at least, it sort of almost goes against so much of the things that make Fincher iconic. It feels like maybe he's stepping out of his comfort zone.
You know what it reminds me of?
Not saying that he's intentionally tried to be comfortable before, but it just really feels like when you think of Fincher, this is like the opposite of that. I always think of very mechanical editing. I think of even and camera movements as well. It's very stylized. I feel like a lot of the criticisms I'll have with maybe early 2000s films come from people trying too hard to be Fincher without understanding what made him so great.
Yes.
And all that shit I don't think you could do in a film like this. Like maybe you can, but I feel like that might be the point. Like I think the style he's gone for is great for the subject matter he's gone for. So like, you know, that's the right move to make. It's very creative and it's very creative.
You feel like you'd watch this just before you sit down and watch Citizen Kane, right? Like it's kind of like a double feature.
Yeah, but
like
even the way it's doing like the credits, like, you know, with the text, like it's very much of that time.
Hollywood.
But it's also very like the voice behind it feels very like they're doing it like with a wink to the camera. And I feel like Fincher is not a wink to the camera type of guy. He's very, I don't want to say serious, but there's a certain way. I could see someone like, I don't know, fucking Taika Waititi doing something like this, no problem. But if you showed me this and told me it's Fincher, I would not have guessed in a million years. That's not a bad thing.
It's really hard. It's really hard to get a beat on it from that 1 minute. Like, you know, like it's very difficult.
Oh,
it reminds me more of because he did Curious Case of Benjamin Button, which is not a crime kind of like dark, grimy movie like Fight Club, like Seven, like
That's
Born
true.
Girl.
Yeah,
you know, it reminds me a lot of Social Network, right? It reminds me of something that's a bit more, I guess, not menial, like, you know, not something boring on paper, but something a bit more plain than Gone Girl, right? Like, you know, like something a bit more straightforward.
It's just, when I think of Fincher films, one of the first things I think of is the contrast and just the way that it almost feels like a video game sometimes, even when they're not crime-based, and this is not that. And I think it's a little bit exciting to see such an iconic director just go again. It's like if Tarantino, it's like, you know, everyone was saying like, oh, how Tarantino said he wanted to do a Star Trek movie or a Star Trek episode or something.
Yeah,
that's like that. It's hard to even imagine that because it's so the opposite of everything we've seen Tarantino done before. I'm sure he could still throw in his like long monologues and shots of feet that make Tarantino, but it's still hard to imagine Tarantino directing Star Trek, let alone sci-fi. I think it's the same sort of emotion I have for this. I'm all for it, and if anything, I'm excited for it. But it's just like, damn, like it's cool to see someone do something that you wouldn't expect. It's like when you see a comedian do like a drama film for the first time, or a dramatic actor try to be funny for the first time. There's a little bit of a oomph to it. There's a little bit of a interesting. But yeah, it's Fincher though, so you know it's going to be amazing.
Yeah, I can't wait, dude. And like, it's not only is a Fincher, but the lead is one of my favorite actors of all time, Gary Oldman. Right? I mean, like, just that 1-2 combination. It's also coming to Netflix in November as well. So
has Gary Oldman done black and white films before?
I feel like he has.
He's got a face that just screams, "Put me in black and white." I feel like it's appropriate.
I feel like he has, dude. What am I forgetting? But I mean, like, look, let's not ponder on this, right? I mean, like, we can talk about that offline. But yeah, Like, I think he's just one of the best actors working today. Let's move on. Let's move on to a trailer for the 355 or the 355. I don't really know how it's pronounced, but like, look, 355. What do you think about this?
It looks like Ocean's 8 Part 2.
Yeah, literally, like, dude.
Maybe with actors like I care about more, but yeah.
Yes, it looks like Oceans mixed with Charlie's Angels, but with characters that I care about more.
I feel like
with actors.
I feel like the producers, or the director or whoever, looked at those films, learnt from, and I hate to talk like this, but the public reception, not even the films, but just the way the public took them, and said, we want to make a movie like that. But I feel like they might have addressed some of those, I don't know what you would call it. Like, it's almost like bait for the trolls. And I feel like they took that out. It's hard to explain, but look, it looks like this type of film isn't really mine. I'm not huge on spy movies, let alone PG-13 spy movies, let alone throwing the girl power in there. It's just, I'm not the audience for it, but I can appreciate it. But I like the cast. I think it looks like it's made with I think it looks like they know what they're doing. Like, it's really set out. They're not trying to reinvent the wheel. I've kind of seen this movie before, I feel like. But I'm guessing maybe they're trying to start a franchise out of it. Wish them all the best. I'm sure it'll be fine.
Yeah, I love spy movies, dude. Like, I'm all about spy movies. I mean, Mission Impossible, I'll be there day one. Like, James Bond, I'll be there day one. It's just one of those things for me. But like, this looks, nothing in the trailer fully blew me away. Like, like there's nothing in it that's just like, oh, they
are spies, right? Did I fuck that up?
Yeah, so Jessica Chastain. No, you're not wrong. So Jessica Chastain plays a CIA agent. Lupita Nyong'o plays an MI6 agent. MI6 from James Bond.
Right. Yeah.
Diane Kruger is a German agent. Penelope Cruz, Colombian psychologist. Strange.
Just like, you've been shot. Quick, let me just how does that make you feel? Okay,
how does that
go back to fight.
Feel?
Yeah,
yeah. Get on that couch, lie down, and tell me how you feel. Interestingly, three interesting tidbits. Right, so Sebastian Stan is in the cast list. Right, the Winter Soldier. He's playing Nick, a CIA agent, and Mace's colleague. Mace is the lead character's name. So Jessica Chastain's. So he's the bad guy. Like,
I was just about to say, it's like, oh, okay.
Right, like,
I'm just hearing you describe it. Goes, okay, really well-known actor.
He's the bad guy.
He's on a good guy's side, but he's like not a main character. Oh, okay, he was be the bad guy. That'll be the third act twist. Yeah,
absolutely. Point number 2. This is directed by Simon Kinberg. This is his second movie after Dark Phoenix. Interesting. It's interesting to me considering how bad Dark Phoenix was, how terribly it did commercially.
He was allowed to make a movie.
No, not just that, but Jessica Chastain must have some kind of like trust in him. Like, like she must have been like,
okay.
She must have been like, on the set of Dark Phoenix, must have been like, there's a lot of studio interference considering that this is during the Marvel Fox merger kind of thing. So she must have a lot of trust in him as a director to, because apparently this was her idea. So I'm just reading here. Jessica Chastain proposed the idea for a female-led spy film in the same spirit as Mission Impossible and James Bond series to her director, Simon Kinberg, while in production on that film, on Dark Phoenix. So that's really interesting to me that she specifically chose Simon Kinberg.
I'm like, that's fine. Look, the action scenes in this already look like miles better than they were in Dark Phoenix. Dark Phoenix, for the exception of the end, which I think he didn't even direct, had some of the worst action scenes I've seen in a superhero film in a long, long time. I think my big problem with this film is that there's no hook. Like, what's it doing different? The only thing it's bringing is, they're a bunch of spies from different agencies who come together. Like the Avengers, I guess. But like, it's not like with James Bond, there's always some cool new gadget, right? With Mission Impossible, there's some cool new stuff.
So with both, piece. Yeah, exactly. With Mission Impossible and James Bond, the two kind of like hooks are, what Mission Impossible, it's the stunts, like you said, right? Like, how's Tom Cruise going to top himself? But it's also the international element of it, I think. Like, there's both of those movies are shot on location. Like oftentimes, like, you know, they're very, very big, huge formats, usually IMAX kind of things.
IMAX is a huge part of that franchise, yeah.
Right, and this doesn't seem like any of that. Like, I get that it's part of the international sort of like element. Even the poster of it like has the 5 women and the flags behind them, so their respective flags. And like I get it, like okay, it just
Like,
doesn't.
I
agree with you. There's no hook, right?
Yeah, I feel like I could swap shots from 6 Underground in and out with this, and I wouldn't be able to tell a difference.
I like 6 Underground. I didn't mind 6 Underground, but like, here's
But
my.
you know
third
what I
point.
mean? Like, it's kind of like 6 Underground
it's
didn't do
interchangeable.
anything too special, you know?
Right,
And I'm not saying it's a bad film, but it's like, how are you going to convince me to get my butt in my seat?
Michael
other than the
Bay's action
cast?
sequences in that movie will not. I mean, like these scenes won't touch those
Yeah.
scenes. Like I think he's got a flair for like how he films his action scenes. But my final point on this movie is that it's going to be released in January 15, 2021.
Oh, so
there's
there
your
you go.
nail in the coffin. Yeah.
There you go. And if you don't know why that's a bad thing, go see the movie.
We've said it so
enjoy
many times.
We've said it
so many times.
Just go watch the movie and you'll know what we mean. January.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let's get into something. Our final trailer. We've talked about the first trailer for this already, so we're not going to spend too much time on this. But Matt, you said you had a point on this. This is the Ryan Reynolds movie directed by Sean Levy called Free Guy. What are your thoughts on this?
Look, there's not a lot of new material in this from previous trailers. I'm kind of realizing now I kind of made this point earlier on Fatman to some extent, but what I just want to say about Free Guy is it's a video game movie that feels like it's being made by people who haven't played video games. It feels really unauthentic to me. Like, and it's interesting because you look at something like Jumanji, like the 2 new Jumanji films, right? The first one had a kind of fresh take. That's cool. But then you watch the second one and they bring nothing new to the table, nothing to do with video games almost at all that's new. And it's kind of like, okay, who wrote this? And when I see this, it's like, it feels like a bunch of old people who've never played a video game in their life went on Twitch one day or they asked their fucking stepson, oh, tell me 5 things about Fortnite and wrote it down and that's it. Like, there's so many things that
His stepson. I love how specific you were.
Yeah, you know, but it just feels like they don't get it. Like, I get they got the aesthetic right to like these modern age shit like fucking Fortnite games. They've got that shit down, but it's like, yeah, the concept is an NPC has this realization, but one, like, you clearly don't understand the basics of artificial intelligence. 2, it's like they're like, if you make it about video games, make them act like video game characters. You know, there's so many tropes about video games that basic YouTubers have touched on. You could just literally steal their jokes and put it in here if you were shitty people. But there's just it's just a generic action movie, and they say it's within a video game, but it doesn't look, feel, act, or go by the rules of video game. So it's kind of like, what is the point of this fucking movie? That's all I have to say. It just feels like it's, you know how people be like, oh, fake gamer girls, right? This is fake gamer movie. This is a hashtag fake gamer movie. Point. Get it trending. That's all I have to say.
Oh no, I think that's a well made point, to be honest, and I actually agree. I don't think, you know, there's a single person behind the camera who played a video game. I'm holding out for this movie though, not really because of Ryan Reynolds, but because of Sean Levy. I think Sean Levy makes pretty fun movies. Like he made Real Steel, he made Date Night, he made Night at the Museum. I think he's just a talented director in terms of like just creating something entertaining. I think he's kind of like got that Jon Favreau kind of like streak about him, but not as sort of like
big,
prevalent as Jon Favreau. Right.
Look, I will see it just because I want to see at least one scene where Ryan Reynolds shared the screen with Taika Waititi. That's all I want. If I get that, I'll be happy, but it just feels really like not authentic to me, and that kind of grosses me out a little bit.
Yeah. We'll see how we go with that. But look, let's move on to our reviews for the evening. We've got quite a few reviews today, so let's kick into this. I've got one that I'm just going to kick off first with, called The Outpost.
Do you remember what happened?
When?
During the battle.
gentlemen.
Aren't we supposed to be on top of the mountain to win this thing?
Our job is to separate the Taliban from the ordinary people. How do we do our jobs and stay safe? Respect keeps us safe.
I wouldn't trade this for anything. Look at us, band of brothers.
Keep me in your prayers, okay?
Trust me, babe, I quit.
I love you.
We're gonna win by getting their hearts and minds.
We want their hearts and minds, and they want our blood and guts.
So, The Outpost was a movie that I had heard about literally last week. Thursday, I was scrolling down my newsfeed on Facebook, and I came across this ad, like just literally a poster of The Outpost. And I was just like, okay, all right, this looks like a generic poster, but let me check it out, right? So I typed in The Outpost on Google, and the reviews were overwhelmingly positive. And I'm just like, whoa, okay, hold on. Like, if this was like a 54% or a 63% or something on Rotten Tomatoes, I probably wouldn't like give it like the time of day. But this was like sitting somewhere, I think, at 87 or something like that. And I'm just like, well, hold on. That sounds kind of like overwhelmingly positive. And I was like, look, I'm not doing anything tonight. Let me go check it out. So I went on Thursday night to go check this out at the movies. And man, was it awesome. Like this reminded me a lot of Black Hawk Down. I really like the war genre, like the war films. But yeah, this was actually a really nice surprise. Like in terms of not just acting, like Scott Eastwood's in it, Orlando Bloom's in it, and Caleb Landry Jones is in it. So Caleb Landry Jones, from Get Out. He played the brother. You know him from X-Men First Class. He played Banshee. But yeah, like those three are kind of like your leads. And it's a true story about this kind of like outpost, the United States Army outpost in kind of like in Afghanistan. But where it's situated, it's like the bottom of like a mountain, and around it is like mountains. So it's kind of like sitting in this ditch kind of thing. And, the Taliban would take pot shots at this outpost and literally try and kill like the United States Forces soldiers every day. But like these are kind of like, as the movie kind of like progresses, you find out that these are kind of like scouting missions because these Taliban forces are trying to find out like what the layout of the outpost looks like so they can mount a huge assault at the end of the movie. And at the end of the movie, it's about 20 United States Army officers fighting about 200 to 250 Taliban while they wait for air support. And again, this is a true story. And man, the way that onslaught is shown, the way it's directed is absolutely fantastic. There's long takes. Like the sound design is outstanding. You keep hearing like bullets whizzing by. And I'm not even like exaggerating, dude, probably for about 40 minutes. Like the entire ending act is about 40 minutes long, and it is relentless. But yeah, it was actually like a really, really nice surprise, and I was really surprised by this movie. Like it was honestly, if you haven't seen The Outpost, I highly recommend it, dude. It's the only. So apparently, it was the first battle in United States history after 50 years where 2 Medal of Honors were awarded to soldiers, and I was like, man, like that's fucking crazy. But yeah, I highly recommend The Outpost. I'm not going to spend too much time on it. It was supposed to premiere at South by Southwest, but South by Southwest was cancelled due to COVID, and apparently it was released via premium VOD and then in select theaters. So if it's not in theaters near you, it's probably streaming, and I highly recommend it.
Yeah, I actually almost saw it last night with Kate, but unfortunately weren't able to see it. I want to see it as soon as possible. We saw the trailer. This is not intentional segue, but we saw the trailer for it when we went to go see Antebellum, and straight away, she looked at me and she's like, I want to see this. And like, me too. And you know me, I'm not usually a big war film guy, but I think what draws me in is, one, I kind of really dig the way it's shot. It's got a really in the shit
feels
type
very
vibe
guerrilla.
to it. Yeah, and I think that works for like especially films like placed in Afghanistan, and the fact that it's a true story based on something I guess not so recent, but I haven't seen, like, how many films have you seen that take place in Afghanistan or to do with the war and terror that are actually true stories? Like, not a lot, which is weird.
One
right?
pops to mind. I really love Lone Survivor with Mark Wahlberg.
Oh, yeah?
I think it's a fantastic movie. That might have been Iraq, but I can't remember. I think it might have been Afghanistan. I just remember them being up in mountains, so it might be Afghanishan. But yeah,
But there's only a couple
you
like
have a
I can
point,
think
yeah.
of. Like, you'd think there'd be hundreds, but yeah. But that really, I want to see that, man. It looks great and good to hear it's good.
It's solid, dude. Caleb Landry Jones, especially, absolutely kills it. But like, let's move on. You already kind of segued into this. You watched Antebellum. Let's talk about Antebellum.
There she is. Guess what? Daddy is going to get you dressed for school today.
We are descendants of the gods. This land was always ours. But we must never relent. We're nowhere and everywhere.
I'm going to try and keep this spoiler free.
Unfortunately, I didn't get a chance to go see this. If you recommend this, it's up to you to keep this spoiler free. I will see it if you kind of like rave about it, but I don't, my schedule right now.
Yeah. So this movie, it's one of those movies where I think if you have it spoiled for you, the movie will be spoiled for you, because this movie, it's not perfect by any means. In fact, but it does some really cool stuff. So basically, the way the film starts is it takes place, I think, during the Confederacy. Your main protagonists are slaves, think like 12 years a slave type stuff. It's very horrifying what these slaves go through. And then this movie sort of split into three parts. And something happens maybe half an hour, 40 minutes into the film. And the only other film I can think of in recent history I can give this compliment to, weirdly, is Tennant. And that's with Tennant. The scene I'm talking about when that blue and red room scene. The emotions I felt there, I never felt through any other film. There's this weird sense of confusion with realization and kind of enjoying that in the moment, and even seeing it second time, like it wasn't strong the first time, but because you're still trying to piece things together. So it's like, it's really interesting. I wouldn't say this is as good as that. No way. Like that's kind of an incredible moment in cinema, but I've never had a movie flip on me so quickly and me just be like, what? And I enjoyed it. So it kind of feels like a whole new movie at that point, which is kind of insane. But then this is where my criticisms come in. Once this big thing happens, this big twist, they don't do much with it. And because it just kind of happens,
that's disappointing.
Like it's not the halfway point, but probably close to it. It doesn't really do much. And so for a while you're like, okay, so what are they going to do with this? This is cool. And like, it's a nice thing brimming there. And then it's kind of like, doesn't lead to much until I'd say the third part of the movie, which might be the last 20, 30 minutes of it, probably 20 minutes of it, where they have a twist, which is cool. And it sort of like gets the two first parts of movies together more, but it kind of feels a little bit been there, done that. I've seen, I think, in recent history, maybe one movie and one video game do this before. And I don't want to spoil anything, because it is kind of worth seeing it for these two twists. But
because the trailer is kind of interesting, because I've seen images of Janelle Monáe in modern times, and then images of Janelle Monáe in like as a slave in like Confederacy times. So I'm just like, what is this? Like,
this whole movie, like when they dip into that sort of stuff, like she does play sort of two characters. I don't want to give anything away, but it's kind of like, what the fuck? The problem is like they have these cool moments, but they don't do a lot with them. And so unfortunately, like, I don't know if I can definitely recommend it to everybody, but me and my girlfriend, we really enjoyed it. In fact, she said it was one of the best films she's seen in a long time. She loved it.
Oh, wow, okay.
Which, to be honest, I thought she wouldn't be into it at all, honestly. But like, she fucking loved. She's been recommending it to her friends at work. I think it's still really cool, and that's why I don't want to spoil anything, because I'm like, you should definitely. I think it is worth seeing it for the twist. For at least the first one that happens, and I want to say acting is really good for the most part. The lead character played by Janelle Monáe. She's really good. She's pretty charismatic too. I really like her. I don't love, however, Jenna Malone, I think her name is. She's doing like, look, I know like her characters, the point of her character is to have this southern drawl and the way but the way she just plays herself, it's like, I want to punch her in the face. But I guess it's kind of, I think I'm supposed to feel that because she's the bad guy, but I still don't like that bitch.
Okay.
But yeah, and so basically I think the movie, it's not going to be for everybody, but I really liked it despite a lot of problems. And I also think it's shot beautifully. And also, just real quick, if you love the soundtrack for Us, watch it because it feels like the same soundtrack. And I love the soundtrack for Us.
Produced by Jordan Peele, right?
No, no, I don't think so. I think it's another producer of that, if I'm not mistaken. But someone who collaborates with him a lot. I'm pretty sure. Wait, let me just double check that. Yeah, not Jordan Peele, but it's another producer that worked on both Get Out and Us.
Okay.
I'm not sure who it is, but I had the same thinking going in.
I think it's Gerard Bush. But yeah, so...
Probably.
Okay, like, that's interesting. I wasn't initially going to go see this. And, like, look, I am not a big kind of, like, you know, I don't fully listen to Rotten Tomatoes, like, as much as I talk about it, you know, like, whatever. But, like I said, if a movie's leaning one way, if reviews are leaning one way for a movie, then I'll definitely go see it. And likewise, if it's leaning the other way. This was sitting at 26%. And I was just like, okay, I'm probably not going to see this. It doesn't have my interest, like, whatever. But, you know, your words and the way you've kind of talked about this have kind of like really intrigued me. So I'll probably definitely go check this out.
Yeah, I think from what I've seen, it seems very divisive. And look, it does get slow in the middle a little bit, but I think it's interesting with what they try to do. And I will never fault a movie for trying to do something different. I think my only other criticism is it feels like they might be trying to get at some message, but I don't know what it is.
There's definitely
and if there's
a race message from what I've heard.
I don't know if they drive it all the way home. But look, at the very least, you're going to leave saying slavery's fucked up because slavery's fucked up, and they show you how fucked up slavery can be. So at the very least, they achieve that.
Okay, so are you? I can't remember. Are you still giving reviews out of 10 or?
I don't even know what we do anymore, man. I'm going to be honest with you.
I mean, like, I personally don't, but I mean, you can absolutely go for it.
Like, I might give it a 7, but like I would say the first 40 minutes are just fucking so fucking.
Oh yeah. Okay,
so good.
nice.
So, as in, like, sorry, I should be like that because that's all the all the slavery stuff. But it's really well filmed. It's really all put together. I think it's really great. And that first twist, man, it just fucking it got me.
All right. Oh, that's awesome. That's actually really good to hear. I might go check that out then. Let's move on to another one. I'm going to talk about the trial of the Chicago 7.
You know why you're on trial here?
The whole world is watching. The whole world is watching.
You all right?
I was until I saw that.
The whole world is watching. The whole world is watching.
Martin's dead.
The whole world is watching.
Bob is dead.
The whole world is watching.
Jesus is dead.
The whole world is watching.
They tried it peacefully. We gonna try something else.
The whole world is watching.
These rebels without a job.
They're a threat to national security.
This revolution, we may have to hurt somebody's feelings.
Get on the street! Get on the street!
When you came to Chicago, were you hoping to draw the police into a confrontation? I'm concerned you have to think about it.
Give me a moment, would you, friend? I've never been on trial for my thoughts before.
So, The Trial of Chicago 7 was one of my most anticipated movies for a while. It's written and directed by Aaron Sorkin, who wrote The Social Network. He wrote Steve Jobs. He created The West Wing. He's definitely got a flair for dialogue, right? Like, he's very fantastic at writing characters. So this is not his directorial debut. Carlos Freitas was very, very kind to help me out with that because I accidentally said that this was his directorial debut, but it's not. He directed Molly's Game with Jessica Chastain a couple of years ago. But The Trial of Chicago 7 is miles ahead of Molly's Game. This is an absolutely astounding movie, dude. Like, this is, it's 2 hours long, and I couldn't take my eyes off the screen. Like, it was just engrossing from start to finish. It told a story that I had never heard about before. I'd never done any research about at all. I did know that in 1968 that there were protests about, against the Vietnam War, but I didn't know about the trial of the Chicago 7. And the Chicago 7, the way that it's cast is absolutely fantastic, dude. The cast members themselves, the way they actually are able to kind of like navigate their way around Aaron Sorkin's script, it's absolutely just mind-boggling, dude. Sacha Baron Cohen, this is the best thing I've seen Sacha Baron Cohen in. Like, this is by far his best performance in anything ever. And I'm including Borat. I'm including everything that he's done. He is electric in this role. Because we know that he can be funny, and he is funny in this movie, but he's really able to work his dramatic skills in this, like to a fantastic extent. Another shout out that I really want to mention is Eddie Redmayne. We know that Eddie Redmayne can act, right? Like, he's won an Oscar for The Theory of Everything, playing Stephen Hawking. But man, like, is he just he kind of like ties this entire ensemble together, and he's kind of like carried that on his back, and he's just so good in this role, dude. Another one that I really want to mention is Yahya Abdul-Mateen II. I'm just gonna call him Yahya from now on. But man, he plays not just a Black Panther kind of figure. He plays one of the leaders of the Black Panthers. I can't say anything without spoiling this, and I really want you to watch this because it's coming to Netflix, I think, next week. And I know you're going to be kind of like blown away from like this movie. Like, I just know it. Just from a writing standpoint, the directing standpoint, music, cinematography, acting, everything, just all of it across the board is just 10s out of 10s out of 10s on 10s. And like, I know I said I don't give like scores anymore, and I'm not. I'm just saying, like, that's just the level that we're working on here. The reason I say that this is going to win the Best Picture Oscar is because this movie is so relevant today, even though it takes place in 1968. Like, this is a story that's set 50? What's the math there? What am I doing here? 52 years, right? 52 years?
Sure, why not? Let's go with that. I'm not doing math. Fuck that shit.
We got to break out the calculator. But yeah, 52 years, dude. Like, that to me is kind of like that says a lot. And, like, Aaron Sorkin started making this movie before the George Floyd riots, before, the big Black Lives Matter movement that we have currently going on. Black Lives Matter has been around for quite a while. But, considering that everything that's happened this year, this movie was way well in development way before this, and it's just as relevant as it is back then. I couldn't sing my praises any higher for this movie. I drove all the way out to Newtown for this movie, and I was not pissed at all. Like, Newtown is like an hour away from me, and it was after work, and I was like tired, and I'm just like, this better be fucking worth it. And I left the cinema just absolutely. It's one of those movies where when the credits roll, you sit through the credits kind of like pondering what you've just watched. Like, it's just one of those movies. So yeah, man, absolutely highly recommend The Trial of the Chicago 7 when it drops on Netflix really soon.
Dope. Yeah, I was actually looking for it the other day because I know you'd seen it. I didn't realize it went to movies, and was like, oh, okay, I might watch that too. And I looked on Netflix and I couldn't find it.
Yeah, it's I mean, like, it's trying to get its Oscar contention, right? Because it has to play for a limited run in cinemas. So before it drops on Netflix, I think it's this week. I really want to be right there. But yeah, like I don't know if it's this week. I'm trying to find it. I don't want this to be dead air.
This is important for some reason, so I'm just going to talk about peanuts. Peanuts are delicious food. You can get them salted or not salted. Sometimes you can crack them in half. Sometimes you can get them bought and they'll come in shells and you can break the shell. There we go.
I'm back. Thank you so much. Peanuts. This is going to release on Netflix in 4 days, October 16th, 2020. So absolutely drop what you're doing on Friday and go see this movie.
Cool. Now back to your regularly scheduled programming of peanuts.
Yeah.
Peanuts. Some people are allergic to them. Some people aren't.
Dude, we just change our entire podcast format and structure. It's just like, what the fuck? All right, let's get to something that we both watched. I actually didn't know you watched this. And it was like a pleasant surprise to me that you watched this, because I thought I'd have to talk about this by myself. Let's get to American Murder, The Family Next Door.
My name's Nicole, and I'm calling because I'm concerned about a friend of mine. I dropped her off at her house at 2 in the morning last night, and I haven't been able to get a hold of her this morning. I've gone to her house, and her car's there. She won't answer phone calls. She won't answer text messages. What's her name? Shanann Watts.
So this falls in line with Netflix with basically releasing a new murder documentary every 2 weeks. I think eventually they're going to start running out of murders and they're going to have to start committing them themselves just to keep up with their current thing. That's a good pitch for a movie. I might make that too. I'm going to write that script as well.
I think Netflix is going to come right after you, to be honest, if you do that. So
I'll be the first one they kill. That'd be a great documentary about my murder. Yeah, man, I think it's hard to talk about these docos, I think, because like it's a story, it happens. My biggest issue with this is I feel like they really struggle to fit the runtime. So they try to really lengthen it out. But it is interesting to see how this guy tried to cover him murdering himself and his daughters. And then the reveal at the end of how he killed the girls. It's fucked up, man. It really stuck with me. A lot of this stuff doesn't really get to me, but that fucking did, man. That was like, I was thinking about that for a while.
So did you know, I'm curious because I knew about the case of Chris Watts and Shanann Watts before discovering this documentary. Okay.
Not
so
a thing.
You didn't know that Chris Watts, as you were watching this, committed this crime?
I mean, I kind of assumed it pretty early on.
Okay.
Yep. Yeah, like pretty much not straight away, but like I think within the first 15 minutes, I was kind of like, I bet he did it. Like I wasn't fully certain. I had no proof or evidence or whatever. I know my girlfriend did as we watched it because she had read up on it a little bit. But yeah, I kind of guessed it. And then once they sort of went into the lie detector stuff, I kind of was like, oh, okay, yeah, they got him good. But yeah, I feel like there's not a lot to, it feels like for the most part, they're just laying out the facts. The one thing I do want to say that I like about a lot of these documentaries, like this one and Don't Fuck with Cats in particular, fantastic editing. I wonder how they fucking do it. I really do, because this must be so much material.
This one in particular must have taken so much time. And like, sorry, man, I was getting into my thoughts, but yeah, you finish yours off, and then I'll get into it.
How do they had all these text messages to go through that they were putting up on screen, so much footage. There's not a moment of dead air, of dead footage. Like there's always something to keep you visually engaged. And there's always, like, they never have to cut to an interview, really. It's kind of amazing how they're able to keep the story going. And I remember thinking similar things of Don't Fuck with Cats, but this had like even less interview stuff to go with. So the big compliment I will give to this, but it seems to be a common trend with a lot of these murder documentaries these days, is the editing is really fucking good. Yeah, I don't really have much to say to this though, other than like, it was super fucked up, and yeah.
Well, that was kind of like what I kind of wanted to touch on. So this had 0 interviews and talking heads in it. And that's something that I was kind of like really looking out for in particular with this documentary, because I was like, they're telling this story entirely with footage and messages and evidence, like hard evidence, like not hearsay and not kind of like not eyewitness situations or anything like that. It's literally all hard evidence. And I was like, I've never seen that in a documentary before. A documentary would often take a talking head and kind of like explain to the camera what's going on or what the situation is and how people are feeling and things like that. But that was not the case in this particular documentary, and I was just kind of blown away by that, dude. Like, I was like, whoa, what the fuck? Like
you're waiting for the first interview to come in, and it never comes, hey?
It never came. And again, I knew about the case of Chris Watts and Shanann Watts and their two beautiful children before this. I'd come across a video, I think last year on YouTube, and the entire video is all on YouTube. It's the body cam of the police officer who arrives at the scene, and basically it's the neighbors. It's all uncut, by the way. You see the cut version in the documentary, but it's a police officer arriving for the first time. The neighbors are kind of like, at the door. They're like, "Oh, we haven't heard from Shanann in ages," and then you see the husband arrive, and what the video does is it pauses and kind of explains to you how Chris Watts is lying in the situation, like in terms of like his
some
his facial
YouTuber
structure and his tics.
Right, some YouTuber's gone in and added like extra pauses.
But I think it's an actual psychologist from memory. Like it's an actual psychologist, because they go over to the neighbor's house and the neighbor has his kind of like security footage set up, and you can see Chris Watts kind of like looking at the door, like just being sticking his phone in his face, trying to look distracted because he knows that he just kind of got caught red-handed. And it's absolutely insane the way that the police are just able to kind of like catch this guy red-handed, and just how far and how long it takes this guy to crack. Like, he just won't let go of the fact that he did it. Like, he just keeps saying, he keeps coming up with a lie. Like, he says, after he admits the killing of Shanann, he says that he has the gall, dude, the fucking spine to say that his dead wife, killed his children before he killed them. Like, and that pissed me off, dude. I'm just like, are you fucking serious? You blamed your dead wife, like the death of your children on your dead wife. Like, you can't. Ugh. Well, so spineless, dude.
I think, yeah, of course, but like that's also how desperate someone like that is. What I find kind of stupid on his look, it's sad seeing anyone throw their life away. I think, regardless of how fucking evil it is, it's fucked that they got to that position. I imagine anyone, if they'd committed a murder, they got to go in fight or flight mode. I don't think. I reckon more people than you'd think would not want to surrender themselves straight away. You don't see a lot of people who go to these lengths. Like he came with a lot of lies. I think a lot of them might have been on the spot. Who knows? It seems like he didn't really think of it very hard. Like, he left the phone there, but left all the kids' shit, and he even brings it up. I think the interesting thing to talk about, though, is at the very end there is some text on screen, and if I remember it correctly, it sort of is saying most of these things happen in spur of the moment. A lot of the time, no, a lot of them are premeditated, and a lot of the time it is like the partner. A lot of the time it is male. So they give you some like facts to kind of help you shape your opinion a little bit.
It was absolutely premeditated.
Yeah.
It was 100% premeditated.
But that's what I'm going to get to. I think my issue is it probably was. And if so, I wish the documentary touched on that. Now, obviously they can't because no evidence or whatever of that. But if they had the talking heads, they could have. They could have had someone talk about how, this clearly, or that this is probably premeditated. This is all that. I'm not saying it's a bad documentary for not doing that, but I think it would have been so much more interesting if they did have something to throw in at the end, because I think it could have been interesting to explore.
So premeditation is often kind of like evidenced by actions. So right, if he messaged someone like, "Hey, I'll be there in a few minutes. I'm just wrapping something up," right? Like, that's premeditation. Like,
Wrapping up
like
the
that
body.
is evidence of, yes. So look, it's something like that. But look, I dug this documentary in terms of like the way, just how it presented the facts of the case and how, I guess, somewhat unbiased it was. It felt somewhat unbiased. Like it felt a lot of like, I guess that's what happens with removing the talking heads out of it, right? Like you're not getting I guess interviewees who come in with like opinions. Yeah. So I was really like kind of like floored by that. So I really enjoyed that element of it.
That's a good point. And I think by not telling us all the facts straight away and sort of presenting it to us as this is how the public saw it, that sort of gives you it's good for dramatic. I've always thought of it from a dramatic effect, like, oh, what's going to happen, rah. But I guess you're right. It's less biased that way by doing so because you're forced to make your own opinion.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, man, that's American Murder, The Family Next Door. Let's move on to our final one of the evening, and that's Des.
Why did you do this? I was hoping you could tell me that.
It is the story of one of the most infamous serial killers in British history.
Mr. Nilsson has confessed to killing 15 men over a period of 5 years.
The victims, often homeless, were murdered in Nilsson's homes in North London. The crimes undetected until 1983.
So, Des, if you guys stuck around for the interview, you'd probably know that I really enjoyed this miniseries. It's only 3 parts. It's on Stan. It's on ITV in the United Kingdom, and I can't remember where it is in the United States. Patrick Harrington mentioned it, but essentially it stars David Tennant, who starred as Doctor Who, and he was the Purple Man in Jessica Jones. He plays a real-life serial killer named Dennis Nilsson. Dennis Nilsson's crimes were, and I'm not going to even like sugarcoat them, horrific, right? So they were just like, he killed 15 to 20 people. And the way he got caught, look, this is not really spoilers because it's kind of like public record now, and this happened like 40 years ago. The way he got caught was he was out at work one day. He called a plumber the day, like before he left, and he said, look, my fucking drains are backed up. Can you come check this shit out? The plumber arrives at his residence while he's at work, looks at the drains, finds chicken bones, or what he thinks are chicken bones. But it looks like human bones as well, like mixed together. So what he had done is he had killed people at his apartment or flat or residence or whatever, and cut these people up and shoved them or flushed them down the drain in pieces. So he'd boil their heads and get rid of the skin and things like that. Like, this is real. This is all public record. And he would buy KFC and mix the KFC with those remains just to kind of like give off the kind of like the appearance, right?
I'm sorry to interrupt.
Yeah,
but
please.
Can you just, so I know, and for the listeners out there, do they actually show the KFC branding in the video in the film?
No, they don't show it in the film. But it's mentioned. It's mentioned by the plumber that he's like, it was amongst KFC.
Oh my God. I'm just imagining the Colonel's face there with like a blood splatter on it and the fucking lawsuit coming.
No. But like, look, let me just tell you, dude, David Tennant's performance as Dennis Nilsson is probably, and I'm not saying this because I'm biased because I got to interview the creators. Like it's totally not. One of the best performances of the year. Like, I'm not even kidding. Like, hands down, one of the best performances I've seen of a real life kind of like serial killer ever. Because the thing about Dennis Nilsson was that he was very hard to read. You know, like when he got home, because the police waited for him once he got home from work. And he got home, the police officer just straight up asked him, all right, man, where's the body? Like, I'm just not going to even sugarcoat this. Where's the body? And Dennis Nilsson takes a beat and he says, it's in the cupboard. Like, you know, like not even like there's nothing on his face. He doesn't even bother lying like we talked about with Chris Watts, right? Like he goes in, starts talking to the police at the police station. And the police station says, he says in the car on the way, yeah, there's about 15 more. Like, dude, like not even like, he's not even prompted for that information. He's like, yeah, there's about 15 more. And the police, like later in interrogation, ask him, like, why did you do it? And he says, I was hoping you could tell me that. Like, you know, he's just so, like, mentally, you don't know where his mind is. And Dennis, like David Tennant plays that so well because you can't get a read on him. Like, you don't know what information is the truth. You don't know what isn't. And it's just so insane. Like, just, like, getting into the mind and, like, psychology of this guy. Because he also didn't remember their names. Like, he met these, because he was a homosexual. He met these guys at, like, bars and shit, and, like, he'd take them home. And he says he has some remorse. He's like, I can't remember their names, but I actually kind of wish I did. Like, you know, it's strange because you can't get a beat on this guy, and it's just absolutely insane. Like technically speaking, the miniseries looks like it could have been a HBO production in terms of, like, how it was shot. There's long takes. It's it looks like a Fincher production. Like, some of the shots in it are very Fincher-esque. It's funny, I actually brought this up in the interview, but the first time you see Dennis Nilsson, he's on a bus, and I was like, man, like, that bus shot is so memorable. And Lewis, the director, goes, oh, it's funny because we actually were about to cut that shot, but because, like, he storyboards everything. So he's like, I was about to cut that shot because we didn't really have the budget for it all the time. And he's like, but our second unit director, who worked on Chernobyl, like, managed to get that shot for us. And I'm just like, that's what blew my mind, dude. Like, I was like, what? No way. So yeah, man, like, it is just such a well-crafted story. And again, it's only 3 episodes at 40 minutes each. Like, you know, it's only going to take you just about 2 hours, about a movie length. And it's just an absolutely fascinating miniseries that I really, really, really weirdly enjoyed because I was just so enthralled by David Tennant's performance. If you put someone else in this performance, it doesn't work. It just straight up doesn't. Like, it is, you know, like the other stuff is still there. The great score, by the way, is fantastic. It feels very Joker-esque, like it's that violin. You know, the cinematography would still be there, but what elevates is David Tennant's performance, and also the guy who plays Peter J. His name is Daniel Mays. Both of them are fantastic. He's the chief inspector who's, you know, talking to David Tennant. But yeah, it's outstanding, dude. I highly recommend this.
No, I'll definitely be watching it, man. 110%. Sounds great.
110%.
Yeah,
absolutely. And thank you so much again to Lewis and Luke for jumping in and I guess supplementing this episode with our Des interview. Let's get to our MDF game, which dropped really late. This is becoming a trend for us, dude. I woke up this morning and I was like, oh shit, we're doing upcoming attractions today. We don't have an MDF game. So I was like, look, let me throw something out. I didn't have time to consult you, so I apologize for that. I was kind of like off the cuff. But the question was, do you have the question up?
Yep. Oh, do you want me to read it?
Yeah, go for it. I actually don't have it up, but I know what it is.
What is your favorite, you're saying capitals, favorite film/TV show based on a true crime or real life criminal?
So this is, and I understand it's a bit morbid, you know, but I just thought, you know, considering we're talking about Des, considering we're talking about American Murder, it's probably fitting, right? And look, when I say favorite, I highlight favorite because people often go with best, and those two are not the same things. Like, you know, like you can, like those two can be two different things. So this is a very broad category. Like, you know, I said in the actual MDF game on the poll, which you can go check out at Facebook on the after party, I said that, you know, the possibilities are endless. So if your choice doesn't appear in the poll, feel free to add it. A lot of people did, so thank you so much for that. Matt, I will never guess yours. Like, I just won't. Like, I think we should just tell each other.
Well, look, I'll be honest. I haven't really thought about it too much, so I've just picked something random from the list. Not random, but something I like. And I'm sure if I spent more time, I would probably change my answer. But I'm going with this week. I'm going with The Wolf of Wall Street. It's a great film. It's undeniably a great film. Great performance. I love the editing. And I think it's a really fun movie for what it is.
Interestingly, it's not what you think about. Like that's not the kind of film you think about when you think like true crime or like a real life criminal kind of like biopic, right? Because it's so light and, you know, often so light. And,
yeah,
and you know, very clippy.
And that's why I think I was saying, like, if I had to think about it more, it'd probably change because when you just say, if you said murderer or murder or something, it could be, it changed the whole question. But crime is a big thing. It could just be
Very
drug
broad,
dealers,
yeah.
you know? Look, Wolf Creek, I think is, it barely makes them there because I think it's inspired by a couple different serial killers.
Yes.
But if
mainly Ivan Milat. But yeah, I hesitated before putting that there, but I just thought, you know what, why not?
yeah, but what I was going to say is if Wolf Creek 2 made it on there, which is definitely not inspired by true story, I might have gone with that because I watched it recently and I thought it was a lot of fun. It almost has a very different vibe from the first one. It's probably arguably a shittier movie, but I like it more for some reason.
I've only seen it once. I saw it at the movies. All I remember was CGI kangaroos. That's all I remember. The truck. That's literally, I don't know why that springs to mind.
That's what our country needs, man. More CGI kangaroos.
Yes, absolutely.
What did you go with? Because I'm not going to guess
I'll
yours.
just tell you mine. Yeah, you're never going to guess it. Without a doubt, it's Zodiac. I think.
Oh, fuck. Yeah. Zodiac. Yeah, that's a great movie.
Like it's David Fincher. I mean, I already hopped on about David Fincher enough, but it's the first thing that springs to mind when someone mentions a true crime murder kind of like biopic movie. Like, even though we never actually physically see the Zodiac killer like we do with John Doe in Seven, it doesn't follow them. They're not the lead character, but it's all about them. Like, and I think just the way that movie's shot, the way it's edited, the way it's scripted, the way it's acted, it's kind of flawless. Like, it's a 2-hour, 40-minute movie that just flies by at a clip.
Yeah, I could have easily picked that movie. It's great.
100%. Let's get to our poll. So this, like I said, this poll went up very late, so we didn't get that too many votes. But what actually won this by a mile was Goodfellas. Goodfellas, yeah, I think is incredible. I mean, like, well done to the after party because it's just absolutely amazing. It's obviously based on a book, which is based on true elements, called Wise Guys by Nicholas Pileggi. But yeah, Goodfellas is one of Martin Scorsese's best films, I think. Matt, you chose The Wolf of Wall Street. Both very similar movies from one director, and tell really similar stories, but in different ways. And I really, really enjoy it.
Very different execution, but both great.
Marcy Rodeback added one called The Executioner's Song. I'm not sure what that is, Marcy, but holy shit, am I intrigued right now? Like the I guess the synopsis for this, let me just read this out real quick. It stars Tommy Lee Jones, and I'm already in. The story of Gary Gilmore, a convicted murderer who lobbied for his own execution.
Whoa, that's a fucking log line right there. Damn,
that's a hook.
Lobbied for his own execution. I'm on board for that.
I'm gonna check that out.
That's
Marcy.
interesting.
Thank you so much. Luke Noonan voted for Monster, the Charlize Theron monster film, which he won an Oscar for.
Yep.
Fantastic, directed by Patty Jenkins. Craig Dealey voted for Extremely Wicked, Shockingly Evil, and Vile. I never saw that. Did you?
Yeah,
because I saw the documentary.
I don't like it very much.
I remember you having some issues with it.
I had some I didn't like the approach to it, but Zac Efron did a good job in that.
I think I was just kind of like burnt out from Bundy by that point, right? Because Netflix were like, here's all the Bundy.
Yeah.
Right? Like, like they were just like, here's the doco and here's the movie.
You OD'd on Bundy that time. Bundy would make a great name for an illegal substance, by the way.
It totally would.
Hey, man, want to buy some Bundy?
Matt, I see that pill press behind you, so you can start calling that your... Yeah, let's keep that on the down low. And last but not least, but actually came very close to my second spot, Spotlight.
Oh,
Spotlight.
Fantastic.
A Best Picture winner. A movie that we covered very early on in the podcast, and one of my favorite episodes in terms of just how much depth we got into on that particular episode and how seriously we kind of I think we treated it. Is an absolute true crime film. There's no murder in it, but there's 100% trauma and there's 100% crimes committed and there's evidence to back that up with fantastic directing and editing and writing and acting. Michael Keaton, Mark Ruffalo, just absolutely fantastic. An incredible film. If you haven't seen it, I beg you to seek out Spotlight.
Fuck yeah.
Fuck
Put
yeah.
a spotlight on Spotlight.
Put a spotlight on Spotlight. Just a couple of comments today. Patrick Harrington said, give me Leota, Pesci, and De Niro all day, every day. He's referring to Goodfellas. And Rick, I always fuck up his last name. Gentuza? Gentuza.
Call him Rick Godzilla. He'll appreciate that.
Rick G. Ricky
G.
He says, it's obviously going to be Goodfellas, but I'd like to personally recommend one that's really underrated, in my honest opinion. The Untold Story is about these cops who investigate a criminal running an unsuspecting restaurant while trying to trace the steps back to how he ended up running it suddenly, and is based on the 8 Immortals restaurant murders that took place in Macau in 1985. That really kind of like that logline kind of like really intrigued me. So I'll probably check that out eventually, Rick, when I'm out of this current essay shitstorm that I'm in right now. But yeah, that's upcoming attractions today.
Thank you for coming. Bye.
Wow.
Imagine we just ended it like that.
Yeah, I know, like, see you later. And we don't even like play the outro music. It's just like, see ya, ending. Guys, Matt, do you have anything to say before we go?
Thank you very much for listening. We love you. Be kind to one another. Put positive energy out into the world and it will come back to you. I assure you. That's today's advice from Midnight Double Feature.
It doesn't get more wholesome than that. So without further ado, guys, you guys heard us plug our socials right at the start of this episode, so I'm not going to do it again. Thank you so much for joining us for this particular episode of Upcoming Attractions Midnight Double Feature, and we will see you next time.
Peace.
Wait, you didn't do your... Just do it. Do the click and then laters.
Laters.